Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we'll head over to Allen, where he meets with Bryce Hine, Chief Marketing Officer for Sysdig, to talk about what's next for Sysdig after a monumental year in new customer growth. Then we'll air a session from Predict 2023. In this session, Bonnie Schneider and Amanda Rosani host a fireside chat with Patrick Pugh of PwC US and Ming Gong of Transcovery Consulting to talk about what worked for them and what didn't, and what they do differently in 2023 given the macro environment. We then go to Bonnie, where she sits down with Dr. Shubh Basu, co-inventor and product advisor for Red SOS, to discuss how this innovative app is helping to reduce emergency response times, its impact on the tech industry, and its role in the field of emergency response and personal safety. Next, we'll air another episode of The Haunted Hacker with Mike Jones. In this episode, Mike Jones continues his discussion with Greg Vandergast about new approaches to security in the state of the industry. Then we are airing an episode of CISO Talk. In this episode, Bitch Ashley introduces new co-host, cybersecurity expert and CISO advisor, Jennifer J.J. Manila, as the two will explore the role advisors play in helping guide cybersecurity leaders in their organizations across diverse subjects, including network technologies, governance and compliance, AppSec, and securing cloud-native infrastructure and applications. Mitch will then be joined by Mike Lukides, Vice President of Emerging Technology Content at O'Reilly Media, to discuss the top developer trends and technology shifts outlined in O'Reilly's report. Then we'll wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View at the Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews LogZ.io CTO Asaf Yagal, as Asaf explains how generative artificial intelligence will be used to better automate DevOps workflows. Then Mike interviews Faisal Bhutto, Senior Vice President for Cloud and Cybersecurity at Calian IT and Cybersecurity, as Faisal explains how generative artificial intelligence platforms such as ChatGTP are about to turn the cybersecurity world upside down. And that's what we have coming up for you in this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for March 7th. First up, to limit China's ability to obtain technologies that could enhance its military strength, the Biden administration plans to implement new rules on certain overseas investments by U.S. companies. The executive order will restrict American investment in advanced technologies that have national security applications, like next-generation military capabilities, that could improve China's military decision-making capabilities. The White House's move follows the implementation of export controls in October of 2022 to limit China's access to advanced chips, and is part of a broader series of measures aimed at targeting China's technology sectors amid an already strained relationship between the world's 2 biggest economies. Next, Amazon has announced the construction of its second headquarters in Virginia will be delayed due to the company changing plans regarding remote work and its recent round of layoffs. The construction of the tower, however, is still expected to proceed as planned. Despite the delay, Amazon is still committed to Arlington and has already hired thousands of employees for the first phase of development, which was set to open in June. Amazon has said that the delay will not affect any performance-based incentives promised to the company, and that it is still determined to complete its plans for the new headquarters. In other news, the U.S. has announced that it will mandate states to report cybersecurity threats in their audits of public water systems due to the increasing risk of cyber attacks. The Environmental Protection Agency has stated that cyber attacks on public water systems pose a significant threat to public health and will provide assistance to states and water systems to build cybersecurity programs and provide technical expertise. The EPA's memo establishes minimum cybersecurity measures for the municipal water systems, following the administration's earlier efforts to establish standards for pipelines in the rail sector. This being said, the EPA has not yet set any enforcement deadlines or financial assistance. The White House's recent surveys indicate that municipalities lack the resources to protect drinking water systems from cyber attacks. However, some experts are doubting the effectiveness of the EPA's approach. Next up, ARM, a microchip designer based in the UK, has decided not to pursue a listing on the London Stock Exchange this year. Instead, the company will aim for a US-only listing in 2023, a move that has sparked concerns that the UK is not doing enough to attract technology stock offerings. With this being said, ARM has stated that a UK listing will be considered at a later date. The company, which was founded in Cambridge in 1990, designs the technology behind processors that power devices from smartphones to game consoles. Previously, ARM had a dual listing on the London Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ for 18 years, until it was purchased by SoftBank in 2016. On Security Boulevard, we have an article on a report from Picus that shows a growing use of adaptable malware. This Swiss Army knife malware is so versatile that it can adapt behaviors to different IT environments. What's worse is that the structure of the malware makes it so our current static indicators would have a hard time detecting it. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. On DevOps.com, we have an article that looks at a report that identifies the top 10 open source software risks. The report, which was conducted by Ender Labs, is part of an effort to educate app development teams about what can cause software supply chain compromises. To learn more, go to DevOps.com. Finally, on Digital CXO, we have an article that looks at why you should use the economic downturn to clear out your organization's IT clutter. Today's mantra is do less with more, but instead of cutting back on infrastructure upgrades, organizations should take time to get rid of their IT clutter to create a more lean environment. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. I am happy to introduce you to, he's a first-time guest here on Techstrong, Bryce Hein. Bryce is a recently announced CMO at Sysdig. And for those of you who watch Techstrong TV, you know, we feature Sysdig pretty regularly. They're good people, that they have great product, and we always enjoy hearing what's going on at Sysdig. So let's welcome Bryce to his first Techstrong TV interview here. Hey, Bryce, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Alan. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, don't want to embarrass you or anything, but congratulations on the new role and as CMO there. And let's start with a little bit about Bryce, if you don't mind. We want to share with the audience.
Yeah, happy to do that. And I'll keep it short because I'd rather talk about tech than talk about myself. But so I've been at Sysdig now since the start of the year. Prior to that, I was actually with a company in cyber called ExtraHop. So more on the detection and response SecOps side of kind of the industry. And then previous experience in big data analytics and data management, storage, those industries. But quick fact, Alan, I actually started my career as a systems administrator. So
really?
Yeah. And I've always tried to keep that sort of sensibility and empathy because while the market has completely changed, right, since the mid-90s, certainly the pressure on IT, on DevSecOps teams is higher than ever. And that urgency to do more with less is just like right at the forefront. So anyway, a little interesting tidbit.
Yeah, no, you know what? So from where I sit, Bryce, and I get to interview a lot of people and a lot of CMOs. And I get really bummed out when people in our audience say something like, oh, it's a CMO, he or she's just a marketing person. You know what? I'm going to venture a guess that 66%, two-thirds of CMOs actually started their business careers on the tech side of the house.
Yeah.
They were engineers, sysadmins, security folk, or, some of them write code. Have written code. They have hundreds, thousands of lines of code in commercial products. And then they, at some point in their career, they moved over to the business side.
Yeah.
Right? And it become eventually the successful ones, become CMOs and VP marketing and so forth. So, I'm not surprised. I'm happy to hear it, but I'm not surprised.
As an industry, you think about your viewers, right? And what they're trying to solve within not only just sort of like the overall build cycle and trying to innovate cloud and in the cloud, but also secure it. And that's a challenge. And so if you don't bring people who have technical background to be able to talk to people with really hard technical problems, I think you're missing out. On the speed at which cloud is moving and which cloud security is moving and evolving, you've got to have technical chops or you just won't survive.
I agree. I tell people, even our marketing and salespeople here at Techstrong, right? Because our audience is very technical, and all of our sponsors are tech vendors.
Yeah.
You got to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. You're not going to fake it with these people. They smell it a while away, right? And so it's important. I think you're 100% right. So, Bryce, 90% of our audience has heard of Sysdig. 75% of them think they know what Sysdig does. 50% of them are probably right. But for the other 50%, how would you describe kind of Sysdig's mission to them and what Sysdig does?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So Sysdig fundamentally is a cloud security company. And we got our start solving what we consider the hard part, which is runtime and workload protection. But over the last couple of years, it really spread out to cover the entire gamut of cloud security, which is not an easy thing to do. Anything from configuration and vulnerability management to identity and access controls through to detection and response. So you can think of us as starting with runtime insights. That's how we sort of anchor our value inside our platform. But we apply it to both shift left and shield right. Just that's how we think about the business, is you've got to cover kind of that whole gamut.
Absolutely. I like that. Shift left, shield right.
Yeah.
It's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. What we find, Alan, is that a lot of the runtime learnings that you have, in fact, we just published a 2023 basically security and usage report. So we do this every year. This is, I think, the 6th year we've done it. And you'd be really surprised what you find out about what's in use and how that can be applied to prioritizing vulnerabilities and configurations and things you need to do upstream. So that's where the whole sort of shift left, shield right kind of comes from, as a mindset of thinking across that. Absolutely.
I think we covered this year's report. We cover the report every year. Someone on our team, I think we have an article and some videos if people want to look up on Security Boulevard or on Techstrong TV.
Yeah.
So, Bryce, it's an interesting time, certainly in the tech world, right? We've had a lot of companies doing layoffs. VC funds have slowed down a little bit, though. Fact be told, they're still pretty healthy.
Yeah.
But security's never been more important.
Yeah.
Right? Security's job one. Sitting where you sit now as the CMO here at Sysdig, where do you see the market? Where do you see where you guys have to kind of make your mark and get your message out?
Yeah, I would say this. You're right. The stakes have never been higher, both to solve the things that we know and the vulnerabilities, and to deal with the things that are addressable, and to deal with the things that are unknown. I think about your audience and basically just an army of one going against all kinds of, cyber syndicates and nation states and all of that. So one of the places where I think as an industry, we haven't spent enough time, particularly on the cloud side of the house, is on detection and response for unknown threats. So I actually think this is the year where that becomes more important. if we've done the things that we need to do on shift left, and I'm not saying that's solved, right? There's still a lot to do. It's really trying to figure out how we capture unknown threats in time in a world where, a container life is average 5 minutes, right? And that, we talk about ephemeral, but the people on your audience know, like, things are going up and down all the time. And if you're not able to detect in real time, if you're not able to respond in real time, I think that just opens up the aperture for attacks.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. The average lifespan of a container is one measure.
Yeah.
But I think overall, we've gotten good at this DevOps stuff. We've gotten good at continuous integration and continuous deployment. We've even gotten pretty good at shift left, right? Yep. Shifting, not just security left, but testing, QA in general, and yep. everything else. We're releasing faster and more in a more automated fashion than ever before. But that acceleration of these business cycles, I think, is just more pressure on the camel's back of, we got to keeping up, right? It's like, I finally got up to speed where I'm running with you, and now you hit the engine again, and I got to, and I don't know how we keep doing, right? How much more can we squeeze out of this baby?
Well, there's a couple of things that I see as both good reminders of where we're at, but then also kind of hope for the future. First of all, I think we have to acknowledge that in no part of the business is there more pressure on sort of like speed versus risk and how you manage that, right? I will say on the shift left part, the interesting thing we found is if you look at what is in runtime, if you think about the containers in runtime and so on, 85% of those still have high or extreme vulnerabilities measured by CVSS. So there's still work to be done to prioritize what we're doing shift left. And I think if we can do that in a way that isn't a drag on dev, that isn't even more of a burden, that's a prioritized way that sort of gets the mess out of the way, there's hope in that. In other words, taking insights for what's in runtime and applying them back to vulnerability management and the like. I will say the other piece of hope for me, you mentioned the maturity level of where we're getting to, right? Real-time delivery, uptime has never been higher. I actually think that when we talk about detection and response, Alan, that there's a way to get the response actually automated in cloud well before we do it on-prem. If I give you an example, one of my competitors over in another life talked a lot about TCP resets as a way to sort of like respond, right? Okay. Well, that's like taking a hammer to it, right?
Yeah, no, that was 20 years ago. I'm selling IDS, IPS.
There you go.
There was some of the IPS vendors. That's what they would do when they'd see like suspect traffic. They'd do a TCP reset. It was stupid then. It's stupider now, probably, but right. I'm surprised to hear it.
No, still people kind of espousing the value of that. But I do think, to your point about where we're getting on maturity, there's an opportunity to do automated response in the cloud and to sort of build that into how we think. And to me, that's hope. To me, that's hope of how you can, first of all, you got to address it. You've got to know what those threats are. But second of all, how do you build infrastructure to be able to react? And I think there's hope in the cloud.
Look, one of the things about the cloud was it gave us a chance to maybe correct some past sins, right? To have a fresh start, if you will. Of course, look, you were around the same way I was. When cloud first came out, one of the big knocks was, well, it's inherently insecure, right? Cloud, how do you secure the cloud? I think overall our industry's done an amazing job of answering that, right? If cloud security is not on-prem or, molten castle security.
Yeah.
I think initially people said what they said because they were thinking in terms of taking what we had used, on-prem, if I could use that word, and just shifting it up to the cloud.
Yeah.
cloud washing it. That didn't work. But we've now seen companies like Zystig that were purpose-built for the cloud security mission, right? That weren't built to be sitting as a big honking box next to the router or something, inspecting traffic like that. And it's made a huge difference. I don't know if anyone would raise their hand and say the cloud is less secure than an on-prem data center these days.
Yeah. No, and so I feel a sense of urgency on, helping people solve the vulnerabilities, on doing detection and response in an automated fashion. But I guess I would add one thing you said made me think. There's another hope, which is to do it in an open and community-based.
Sounds like Star Wars. There's one more hope, Yoda.
There's got one more hope, man.
Right. We have.
You gotta have it.
Another. There is another. There's a sister. But yeah, what's the new hope or the last?
I think the other hope is, as we tackle supply chain challenges and so on, which they're just native to what we do, we have to do that as a community. And we believe fundamentally in open source and building on open source and contributing to open source. Frankly, it's a reason that I'm here, is because I also believe in that mission, that ethos. And the company was founded on it. I don't know how many of your viewers actually know, but we're actually the creators of Falco, which is really the default standard for detection and response, or detection in the cloud. And over 50 million downloads. People are using it. Our product is built on it. It's centered around, Falco is open source.
Yeah, I don't know how many of our audience knows this.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that we've gotten a lot of light on. This is something, maybe someone could write an article on that we could put on Security Boulevard or something. It's true. I mean, and look, you're not the only one. So much of our infrastructure today is built around open source, right? Cloud native is almost all open source. So, I think when I look over the landscape, probably one of the biggest things over the last, let's say, 10 years has been the domination of open source. It's not just sneaking in the back door.
No, it's not.
It comes right in through the front door and it's welcomed, right? It's become the standard.
That's right, standard, and it's pushed us on innovation side. I mean, whether it's standards like Falco, or I'll give you another one that we didn't contribute but we use heavily, is a technology called eBPF. And certainly it's getting a lot of hype right now, but effectively what it allows you to do is instrumentation up at the code level, up at the host level. So, and by the way, that's a whole religious war for cloud security vendors: is do you go agent, do you go agentless?
It's always been a religious war.
That's
and there's a lot of charlatans who say they're agentless, but
they sneak an agent in under another name. But yeah, I've fought those wars.
Well, if I could just add a comment on that, I think eBPF is an open source technology that will certainly help. And if you're asking me, I think this year is the year where that gets settled in the industry, where instrumentation is going to have both. It's going to be agentless, where it's very simple to get to API and logs, and when runtime in areas like that where you're going to need to use agents or column collectors if we all want to get more comfortable with it. But it's going to, for cloud security, which is a hard, full throttle kind of challenge, it's going to require a spectrum of use of agentless and agents.
Don't disagree with you for a second, my friend. Bryce, we're about out of time. I told you the 15 minutes goes really quick. We're actually over, but it's been a pleasure having you on. I want to wish you the best of luck over at Zystig, and to all our friends at Zystig. Don't be a stranger. You have an open invitation. Come on whenever you'd like. You got something to share, let's share it. Okay?
All the best, Alan.
Thank you. Bryce Hine, newly installed, newly minted CMO over at Zystig here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hello, hello. It's a beautiful day. I'm Amanda Rosani with Techstrong Group. I am blessed to be here today with a wonderful group of speakers. First off, can you each introduce yourselves and a little bit about the company you're with and some of your experience? Let's start with Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Schneider, and I am a contributor in climate and sustainability for the Techstrong Group. My background is as a meteorologist on television and an author of a book recently called Taking the Heat on Climate Change and How It Impacts Your Health.
Wonderful. So glad you're here today. Patrick.
Yeah, thanks. Also very excited to be here today. Thank you, Amanda. Patrick Pugh, I am a principal at PwC. I focus on the tech sector, and from a work perspective, I've spent a lot of my time in the deals and workforce spaces. So really excited about today's topic and can't wait to have a discussion with this crew.
Great. So glad you're here. Ming.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, everyone. We do have great weather out here after all this rain. But my name is Ming Gang. I started my company, Transcovery Consulting, in 2022. We provide all the digital transformation acceleration services, advisory services. But prior to that, I run a digital agility platform solutions group for UST Consulting. And we provide DevOps consulting, SRE, cloud platform engineering. So anything to make a company go faster, better, and cheaper is what we focus on.
Wonderful. I'm so glad y'all are all here this morning. Well, let's start off. Digital transformation covers a broad territory and range of topics. So before we dive in, can one of you kind of share what is digital transformation, and then why is it important, and what are some areas that it addresses?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to. When I step back and think about digital transformation, I really try and apply just a simple view of it. And it's just using modern technology to either create new or change the way work gets done. And while often it focuses on process and insights and the way it gets done, it can have a very strong impact on cultures and experiences of both employees and customers. So really, in my view, it's how do you simplify it and just use technology to make life better from a work perspective.
Yeah.
Ming, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that as well. I fully agree with what Patrick just said, but I think I think it has such a transformative impact on especially the current society with everything that's happening right now. To me, digital transformation now more than ever has become a matter of survival. A lot of business models going to get so fundamentally disrupted over the next probably, I'd say 3 to 5 years. I mean, we're already seeing it happening. And so like I said, it's a matter of survival at this point. Thanks.
I would agree with that as well, with what Ming just said, because when it comes to climate change and sustainability, if anything, science shows us that climate change and the impacts of climate change are accelerating. So the better we are able to digitize, gather data faster, and of course, communicate those messages at a more rapid rate, it's going to be helpful to not just business, but to individuals as well.
Most definitely. So to that note, what are some digital transformation initiatives that companies you worked with or your own company went through in 2022? Ming, did you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, no problem at all. I would say, obviously, my profession is all about providing advisory service to the other companies. In 2022, we supported many large companies, one of the largest telecom companies, credit report agencies, and so on and so forth. But I would say one of the biggest thing for me, my unit finally hit $100 million after 3.5 years when we started from literally very $10 million a year, right? So and it's really just kind of continuation of executing our blueprint, which we put into place in 2020 when everything started happening. And just to my point earlier, this was really a matter of survival. And we had such hard time in the last 2020, 2021 finding capable, experienced kind of consultants who knows the cloud, who knows the DevOps, to scale up our business. So we put a lot of kind of scaling methods into our strategy, which we continue to execute. And 2022 is really, we start seeing the kind of fruit of our labor, right? So we're very proud of that. To us, it's almost like we ate our own dog and it paid off. So I can talk a little bit more later, but that's what I would like to share.
Did you have anything to add to that, or some experiences you went through, Patrick?
Yeah, when our clients, 83% of executives at work focus on growth and growing, especially in this complex environment. You really have to interact and engage with people. So with that, we are seeing every single one of conversation around technology changes, which enhance digital transformation. This can be a cloud strategy, this can be automation, this can be visualizations, as Bonnie mentioned. But it's in every single conversation we're having. At our firm at PwC, some of you all may have seen our announcement around our My Plus initiative, which is really changing the way our employees will manage their career. It changes the way we staff work, changes the way we enable people to get new skills. It changes really the whole relationship between us, our people, and our clients. So this is a multi-billion-dollar investment we're making. So not only do we believe it for our clients, we're putting it to use and really applying it across our whole ways we work and the way we build our relationships with our people.
So thinking about some of those digital transformation planning initiatives in 2022 that you dealt with, what were some things that went well that you would want to highlight?
I'll go start. I think not looking back, I mean, I haven't even had a time to stop and think about it yet, but I think what went well is we obviously had I think we had a great, in terms of the kind of strategy, in terms of how we need to scale it, because that born out of the absolute necessity, because without that, we simply just not going to get to where we need to be. So for example, one of the things a major scaling factor we put into place is we built a solution hub, because we had 500 people in our practice providing all those different services to companies. And because we are struggling to be able to expand that capacity even more, we took a lot of these kind of reusable components and built a very strong library that's been operationalized that included all the kind of security that's necessary in order to go into production for the client. And I believe we did a really good job in terms of building that out in a very cohesive manner. We were able to leverage that to the great effect. For example, typically, for a company that we build tons of DevOps pipeline, right? In the past, it took us usually about anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for a set of applications. But with the usage of Solution Hub and everything within it, we were able to deliver that in about half the cost, probably I would say a third of the time. So that obviously it's all about acceleration for our customers. I think for digital transformation now more than ever, the entire time is being sped up in terms of how fast they need to deliver results for the business. So anything we can do to really help them achieve the value faster, I think it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. It's interesting. I recently joined the Techstrong group, kind of building out the space and climate and sustainability. And in just the short time, I would say from the end of 2022, one thing that I found, and I found it actually as a moderator during Climate Week in New York City in September, is that there's just a growing interest in organizations in talking about the solutions that they're working on towards climate technology solutions, reducing carbon emissions, how they're going to handle more extreme weather events. And in terms of digitalization, that process of communication, because it seems like we're getting these emergency events like the flooding in California. It's just happening more frequently. So businesses are forced to respond to it. And that's all related to the climate crisis. So there's a growing need to come up with solutions. And I think that through digitization, that will only enhance these solutions to happen faster. And the communication, as I mentioned before, is key. And that is something going into 2023 I'm seeing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to add a slightly different lens on this, first, I agree with the enterprise and business unit level changes that are happening. This is about survival. This is about staying ahead, staying up, or defeating the competition, however you want to look at it. I also think one of the things that's been exciting in the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months or so is the amount of upskilling that has happened at the individual level. So while we often talk about the big transformative change at the enterprise level, we're also seeing some really exciting things done at the individual level. So companies are investing in people, and they're teaching them new technologies, whether that's automation technology, again, or visualization technology, or even cloud fundamentals. So people can use this technology that companies have spent a lot of money on. And when you think about the new modern finance worker or modern salesperson or modern engineer, they are finding, we're seeing even at the entry level, kind of less tenured level employees, finding really creative and innovative ways to change little even bits and pieces of a process. And as you start to get that scale effect, going back to what Ming said, you're really seeing transformative ways of changing how work gets done. Better, faster, cheaper is a theme that you're really hearing now. And we're seeing it not only the mindset at the top, but the actual ability to execute on that down at the level where a lot of work gets done.
Touch, I will have just to add to what you just said. It's what's exciting to me also is I think besides all the individuals has so much resources to be able to upskill themselves, but the advancement in technology just the last year alone, it's absolutely mind-boggling, right? Those AI advancements, the DALL-Es and all those things, where now the individuals can literally be their own professional artists with a just simple command, right? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I'm really excited to see what's going to come in 2023.
Absolutely,
well, and I love Ming. And I'll steal it later and give you credit, Ming. But I really like the way you talk about and framing it as artistry, because it really is some of the things people are doing. When you often step back and hear, it's so simple and so practical and logical, but without the tools and the technology and the skill and the passion to make the change, it never would have happened. The other thing, again, I spend a lot of time talking about mindset and behavior. The executive and leaders, both openness and appreciation for change coming from that democratized level now, where they will take advice and guidance and technology as long as it's governed. It is important to govern it, because we've all seen technology unleashed is not necessarily a good thing. But the way that people are approaching and embracing those changes, I really like your comment on artistry, because I do think you're spot on there.
Most definitely. So on the opposite side of that, we talked about all the positives. What were some of the things that didn't go as planned in 2022? What were some of the challenges and the obstacles that you might have seen?
You guys want to go first?
Yeah.
Bonnie, do you want to hit it, or I'm happy to? Either way.
I was just going to say, and in 2022, that is when my book "Taking the Heat" was published with Simon & Schuster. And the challenge was, even though we were still kind of coming out of the COVID phase, many people were reluctant to meet in person, and we were still dealing with that. So I think luckily we're now going to conferences and meeting people in person. But I think that there's still that challenge of doing things remotely, even though people got a lot better at it in 2020, 2021. 2022, in my opinion, at least the first part of it was still lingering, where that was a challenge. But I'm pleased to say things seem to be doing better, fingers crossed, going forward. But just being quickly to respond to those challenges, I think that the resilience that we all built in the prior years has helped us now, where it does seem a little bit easier.
Yeah, building on that, and Amanda, you'll see a theme where I like data quite a bit. So in some of our recent studies, we found that 82% of the executives out there believe that their digital transformation plans and strategies will be successful. You couple that with 50+% believing that the cloud is the future, but also 50+% believing they've nowhere near gotten their ROI or their value from the clouds. You collide this optimism with expectation with the real challenge of driving change in a company. I do think that there is a little bit of a collision of optimism and reality that we also had to deal with a lot. You couple that with the rising complexity of talent. We've all been dealing with the talent challenges right now. There has been a lot of stalled progress just because it's really hard. And we talk about the process, we talk about the tech. But again, excuse me, I go back to the change readiness and the mindset and the behaviors to embrace and accept the change, the collaboration between business groups, which for a lot of these to be successful, it can't just be one group driving change. It has to be all those connected parts. So one of the things that I've saw as a big challenge in 22 is the optimism coupled with the technology openness, all on a foundation of the talent complexity. Probably did stall some of the progress that we would have seen and liked. The good news is I think there is an openness and an eagerness. You combine it now with a little bit more uncertainty in the economy, where people are now going to, I think, be a little more committed to actually driving change. I would step back and say 2022 is a very successful year on the tech-enabled change front. But at the same time, I think there continues to be a lot of room to improve and do things differently within companies as well.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, certainly went through what we went through in 2022, even though we did great in terms of hitting that kind of century mark, which is, we didn't expect it to happen so quickly, but we did. But on the other hand, part of the other solution, in terms of our strategy to kind of scale our model is to trying to codify all of our, experts in the field, whatever solution they have created, and be able to deliver that to our client in a very automated fashion. So we build our own product platform, software product platform. But I think even though we were able to deliver a very compelling solution to the market, and we start begin to get the momentum of getting into the customer's hands and start test driving it. But if we had to do it all over again, we definitely would love to be able to take a page from, whether it's SpaceX or whether it's Tesla's playbook, where iterate like crazy instead of trying to get a really nice looking product to the to the customers for the first time. We should focus on less is more approach, and really get that feedback in as quickly as we can, so we know what's working, what's not, so we can make our product better. Because what we went through, I think we just took too long to get to the market, but I mean, now we pick up momentum, but we could have done much better. I mean, if Elon can do rockets in that kind of fashion, accelerated test drive fashion, we definitely should be able to do it with our software for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, as I advance in my years, I find I get more and more mantras that I start to preach and live by and such. But one of the ones I constantly say, and my teams get tired of it, is focus is a friend. And I think to your point, a lot of these, when we take them, I'm sure Bonnie, Amanda, being all of us, when we've been talking to companies and clients and even our own firms about these, is it's so easy to get caught up in magnitude. It's so easy to say we're going to change everything in the world and we're going to do it in one big bang. And it's really hard. So I often preach focus as a friend. A lot of push yourself, but milestones that you can achieve, and then celebrate those milestones as you go. Set some that are really hard, and then frankly set some that are achievable. Because when these executives go out and proclaim, we're going to greatly change the way we do business, you want to be able to show your team you're making progress. So sometimes everything doesn't have to be the most complex. Set yourself up for some wins when you're doing this. But Ming, you're nodding. It looks like that resonates with you as well. It's something.
Success breeds success. That's what I learned in life.
Yeah.
So, in speaking about these initiatives and what went well and some of the challenges, are you familiar with any companies that did a really amazing job that you think deserve a shout out, or to summarize what they did that really improved their business?
I mean, I have a ton, but unfortunately, We don't talk about our clients publicly, so I can't. I mean, it's the worst consulting answer ever, but it's the right one. I'd say what I often do is I think there is sometimes a fine line between digital transformation and digital disruption. So what I tend to look at are some of these industries who've done it really well. I mean, Ming talked about it. You look at the space industry; it's been revolutionized by that. No longer is it just a public sector industry. It is now a collision of the best of both sectors. You look at the TMT space, the media space. You all talked some telcos earlier. What they've done in the way we entertain ourselves, the way we watch movies, the way we listen to music. Yes, that's disruptive, and we will also often talk about it. But now I would argue they've digitally transformed the way the media process went to work. So while I can't and won't name companies, you can probably take a guess at some of the ones I'm referencing there that are pretty well noted. But I don't know, my colleagues, if they have other views.
Yeah, I would like to jump in on that, since I've worked for major media companies my whole career. And one of the things I've seen, it's really been impressive, is the way the stories are being told in terms of weather and climate. For example, I previously worked for the weather company at IBM, and they've been using augmented reality to show what is it like if you're standing in the middle of an area where there's storm surge. Because it's one thing to say that on television, it's another thing to see it. So the augmented reality has been a key visualization tool to really hone into the viewer what the dangers and threats are. And other companies that are doing really sophisticated climate modeling as well, using the vast amount of data that we now have available that we didn't even have 5 or 10 years ago, and using machine learning and very sophisticated AI to make high resolution, detailed climate predictions, which is key. And that's going to be in greater demand as we go forward, as these risks continue. So I've seen it on the private sector side, as in business. And I've also seen it in media companies, kind of public facing, and how those messages are communicated as well.
Yeah, Bonnie, I love that you took us there, because I think in the digital transformation world, we would all be remiss not to talk AR, VR, the metaverse, all of those. I mean, even in your world, we have seen a large increase in the acceptance of sustainability. And what I mean by that is not just talking about it, but really through net zero activities, the way factories are built, the way things happen, through the ability to use technology with digital twins and such, and really get into some cool simulations of what happens with different. So I think you're, I think that's a great add to this digital transformation story, that now if you look at that next wave of technology that's allowing us to address some of the biggest challenges facing us, both in the business world, but in kind of as humans, technology is really bringing it to life and making it real for people.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, one of the things one of the disruptions I've seen in terms of technology advancement is the whole, whether or not ChatGPT 3 is going to be the thing or not, but what they have opened up is endless possibilities now, right? So we actually, for one of the client I'm consulting with right now, we are looking at their strategy around the chatbot, for example, to see how we can leverage these kind of advancement to completely change the ballgame. Because instead of focusing on using chatbot just for the traditional kind of IT type of IT service tickets or whatever case might be, those are, table stakes. With this kind of a conversational way of interacting with a bot, we can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. In terms of, for example, the company I'm consulting with, they're doing, at least the group that I'm working with, they're responsible for delivering digital services to the rest of the organization. So with a chatbot, it completely opens up possibility now to have the bot to be the primary interface, or one of the interfaces for their constituents, right? So they can now ask bot pretty much any kind of question and be able to ask clarification question in order to get the information they need, and we can deliver those contextually to them in a much more accelerated manner, instead of having them surf through a bunch of website pages and trying to find exactly what they want to find. We can make that happen immediately. We can shorten that time. So many things are changing, and I'm still exploring.
Definitely, the advances with AI are just incredible. So, we've talked a lot about the benefits of digital transformation today, but we haven't talked about any of the cons. Are there any reasons why a business should not attempt a digital transformation initiative? And what would those reasons be, or a reason they should postpone?
I mean, at the ultimate level, I would say no. I think the question really begs to at what scale and what degree do they undertake them? We know right now with the current market conditions, I think it's just under 50% of executives are really looking at reprioritizing their portfolios right now of where do they make investments. So there's a financial component to when and what do you take on that we're all dealing with. And as I always tell people, I can deal with a good economy. I can deal with a bad economy. What's complex is an uncertain economy. And I think that's what has a lot of these big programs right now under a microscope. When I think about digital transformation, again, the three of us have talked today, there's brand at the enterprise level and there's at the individual level. Companies who are not doing some sort of improvements through technology, process visualization, et cetera, will fall behind. I mean, I do believe that with pretty strong certainty that you must do this to continue to thrive and prosper in today's economy. When I always look at how much you should take on, it's the standard factors. What's the cost? What's the return? What's the change fatigue that your people have experienced? When is the right time to introduce significant change to a company? So I think it really is not should you do it. I think it really is at what degree and at what scale and at what pace do you do it, all underlying with the financial returns. I love to do cool stuff. I want a return on it. Cool stuff for the sake of cool is nice. Cool stuff for the sake of cool plus a nice return. I'm all in on that. But Ming, Bonnie, other thoughts to add?
I wholeheartedly agree. I definitely don't believe that anybody shouldn't do transformation. To your point, it's really a matter of prioritization. Value is a really big word in my in my dictionary as well. That's what I preach to our customers. Like, why do you, for example, if you're building a DevOps capability, why would you do that for an application that maybe only gets minor updates maybe once a year? That's no point. So you need to focus on where it's going to deliver the biggest bang for the buck. But I think the other side of the equation, though, I think when you plan out the transformation, I have seen, there's different companies take a different path. Some people take a top-down approach. Some people take a more of a reactive kind of tactical approach to say, oh, I have a major pain in this area. Let me do some transformation there. And I think for the company who's starting out this journey, I think they really need to try to strike a balance between the two approach, top down and bottom up. For me, I think it makes sense, especially given today's climate where any business model can get disrupted like overnight. It's really important before company invests a lot of money into transformation, they really think about from the business model perspective to start from there. Because if they feel they have to actually use transformation to alter that business model, well then maybe they need to allocate the money a little bit differently. But if the model is sound and they have acute pain in some areas, then perhaps they should allocate money there, right, to address those pain. But blindly just going to one direction or the other, I think it just could be a lot of waste of money as well as not going to get the results very quickly.
Yeah, I would just add that I think that based on what Patrick was saying, also when you're looking at uncertain economy, you do want to invest in what would be giving you the best return on investment. So one of the things that come to mind is I think it was last year I spoke to a climate data company that was showing me their innovations in AI, and one of the things that they had was an augmented reality international global meteorologist that as an image of a person on TV for delivering the weather. And I remember thinking, I think that's a little too much. And he had said that at the time, some people were not quite ready for that. And it was also very expensive to produce. So I think that you kind of have to decide where do you want to, like you were saying earlier, Ming, as well, where do you want to invest and what would give you the best reward on that as well?
I'm glad you brought that up, Bonnie, because let's talk about that a little bit. With today's macro environment, thinking about now and beyond in 2023, how is it affecting digital transformation initiatives? And what do you see happening as it relates to those initiatives moving forward? Do you have any predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's causing some companies to pause. What I'm not seeing in my conversations is anyone taking it off the table. So the good news is I think people realize whether it's a massive system enabled like big ERP type change, a big cloud implementation, or if it's just automating some processes. Companies are still actively talking. Again, I look to my colleagues too, but I haven't seen anyone who say we're going to stop innovating. We're going to stop using technology. The pause to Bonnie's point that she just made. There's again some really cool stuff you can do. But should you right now? So when we think about the microeconomy, what we're seeing is a lot of prioritization, a lot more focus on ROI. But what I am very excited and encouraged about is historically, I think you would have seen a drop off purely on ROI. What I like is companies are still talking about how do they use technology and changing the way work gets done in important areas like sustainability, like diversity and inclusivity, doing things for the community. So I think where the pivot has changed is some of the big, major, grandiose activities may be done in stages, over phases, over pilots, maybe some delayed. It's not being done at the expense of some of these other very important initiatives for our communities. And so I do like that the mindset has changed in the last number of years, that we need to, I often talk about doing what's right with both your head and your heart. And I think that is that combination that we have changed. And I give a lot of credit to different generations coming in the workforce that have brought different lenses and experiences to sets that has been listened to. And so slower, more methodical, more focused, but also balancing some really important initiatives that I think will make us better for the future.
Yeah.
So in thinking about, Ming, did you have something to add?
Sure. No, just kind of play off the same kind of theme I mentioned earlier. I think if internet trend are looking forward in 2023 and beyond, one of the things I definitely see is because the power or because the such acceleration in the technology advancement over the past couple of years, the whole democratization of those technologies give on plus side, it gives people so much of possibility now where they can, for example, right now in the past you have the kind of UX designer and the UI are kind of sort of separate profession because each of them have to take a different kind of discipline and it takes a long time to do. But nowadays, with those kinds of tools, that you literally can have one person that can just simply do it all, right? So those lines are definitely blurring. But the other thing is that the democratization. The other flip side to that is that the whole notion of citizen development, right? Because now you have non-techies can also pick up those tools and start creating workflows, creating new applications, so they can take care of the distinctive needs. But the problem with that is if you do that without the collaboration with IT along the way, very, very likely you're going to see once things goes into production, when something breaks or when something gets hacked because you didn't take all those important measure, that's going to be a big issue certainly for companies who's in those kind of line of business. So I think, for 2023, I think that's certainly one thing the company needs to really start focusing on is, how do we make sure we recognize the need for business to move at the lightning speed, but at the same time provide enough collaboration, but in a very frictionless way, to make sure things are still secured and availability is there, and stability, all those things are still maintained, so they can have the best experience possible.
So real quick, we have about 5 minutes left. I want to ask one more question for companies that are just now looking to digitally transform and entering into this process. What are some of the key tips that you can offer them? Where do they start? How do they get started?
I'll go first. I sort of alluded to this earlier. I think before you embark on this journey, you starting with a top-down approach is really important, because at the end of the day, if the direction you're rolling the boat towards, it's not the right direction, all the money you invested may give you some short-term gain, but it will absolutely hurt you in long term, because now you're taking your eyes off the ball of where you're going. So understand how your business model will be changing, or most likely will be changing in the next couple of years. That's a really good starting point, because that will kind of map out the rest of it will help you kind of prioritize the rest of the investment, if you will, to get the most ROI.
Yeah, building on what Ming just said, I always like to start anything with what are your desired outcomes. So really taking, I think I agree with the approach of what needs to change, but also what do you want to accomplish? So what are you setting out to do? And from there, you can get an understanding, okay, what are the key groups that need to be involved, and think broader than you normally would, because there's always kind of a domino effect of who's involved. On the tech front, it is very easy to fall into the tech trap and think there's kind of an easy button or one tech can solve it all. The interoperability between technologies is pretty amazing these days. And so very rarely do we see a single tech thread anymore at a company. It is usually, and we're seeing more and more kind of best of breed coming together to solve client problems. On that note, don't over customize when you do start to build this. I can't tell you how many companies have said, we're going to get a cloud application, we're going to implement it, we're going to simplify it, and 2 years later they've created Frankenstein. And so all the benefits of standardization of cloud are there. And probably last one I'd mention before I hand it over to Bonnie is talk to your peers, do research. There's a lot out there on it. Even if your direct competitors won't, and often they won't want to have a conversation about how to improve, you can find other companies of relevance that have characteristics, whether it's a geo presence, a workforce type presence, whatever that common factor may be. Talk to people. There's no reason to start this blank slate anymore. There's been so much good work done out there. But Bonnie, I don't know what you did.
Yeah, I was going to build on that, Patrick, because I think communication is key. Talking to other people, talking to others, and how they've implemented their transformation. But throughout the process, it's also very important to communicate internally. Some people might be threatened by this digital transformation, employees, and they don't want to think, are they being replaced? And you mentioned, Ming, that the outcomes have to be clearly aligned as well. So I think it's important that communication is transparent through the process, get the leadership and employees all excited about the digital transformation and talk about the benefits of it. And that clear communication and consistent communication is really important.
Yeah, Chin, I'll just piggyback off that. Usually, in my experience, the transformation project that usually didn't deliver as intended is usually due to the lack of effective change management tactic. Because technology, I mean, we got so much stuff going on, we can solve any problems, right? That's no problem at all. It's really usually the people factor that really make things become uncertain if you don't manage it well, for sure.
Definitely. Well, Ming, Patrick, Bonnie, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate your insights. For our audience, don't go anywhere, because we are going to get a chance to chat with all the speakers from Predict 2023 here in just a few minutes. So stay tuned, move over to that chat room. It's going to be great.
Great. Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
I'm Bonnie Schneider for Techstrong TV. Well, the increase in extreme weather events due to climate change has resulted in a rise in emergency situations, requiring first responders to handle a greater number of calls. In Boston, Massachusetts, for example, one recent paper found a 9% increase in local emergency medical service dispatches on warm season days that had a daily maximum temperature of at least 90 degrees. And on a national scale in the U.S., fire department responses are reported to be nearly approximately 65% called for medical emergencies versus fires. So the demand, unfortunately, for these emergencies is on the rise. And in response to this demand, Red OS SOS, a private SOS service, has developed a single button solution for sending fire, medical, or police help to your exact location in an emergency without voice activation. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Dr. Shub Basu, co-inventor and product advisor of Red SOS, joining me on Techstrong TV. And now we're going to discuss how this app is helping to reduce emergency response times and its impact on the tech industry as a whole. Dr. Shub, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much for having me here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with Red SOS?
Absolutely. So my background, I have been working in the tech industry for almost 25 years and been through, different technology stacks you can think of, have worked in different kind of application, whether it ranges from automotive application or consumer application, B2B applications, both in the hardware and software. So product building is my passion, and helping combine technology with the practical life problems is a passion that drives me and drove me to partner up with my partner, Sam Manson, who happens to be also a veteran in the Air Force. And he and I struck together, brought in different experiences and the need for having technology to solve one of the very critical items, which is address safety, personal safety. That's how we founded this company. And we have been there since 2015.
That is really fascinating, and your timing is perfect, unfortunately, because we're seeing an increase in emergency events. So how does Red SOS help to streamline emergency response, especially in the cloud environment? Many of our viewers of Techstrong TV work in a cloud native, and they're in DevOps, and they're interested in that technical angle.
Absolutely. So, look, technology has done, evolution in technology has actually helped us to solve critical problems, right? Whether it is, we always know that data is king, communication is king, and, cloud infrastructure and how it has helped in kind of, making this applications more robust, more universally available, anytime, anywhere, 24/7 without any human intervention. Like these are the kind of things that really the overall people's lives have been benefiting from technology evolution. Red SOS is not an exception from that perspective. We have written on the technology stack, the innovations that have happened, whether you talk about communication technologies, the advent of smartphone today, 2/4 carry a smartphone always. And people use on an average around 5 hours, they are carrying and using their smartphones. These are statistics as latest as this year. So very clear that the advent, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel when it came to infrastructure needs. We didn't want to load people up with more number of gadgets and devices, which we have done in certain aspects where it is absolutely necessary. When it came to emergency response, our fundamental principle is this. There are 240 million approximately calls that are made to 911 in a year. The 911, we boast in the US about one of the best, possible lifeline that is available to all of us, but they are also inundated. And think about people. People, when they come to them, when you pick up a 911 call, you spend a good, anywhere between 6 to 15 minutes. You never know in an emergency situation, having to articulate where you are, what are you doing, who you are, etc. Our objective, our basic principle is to shave away that time, the response time. And therefore, we built a completely integrated system using, of course, a cloud-hosted, software platform, using, of course, a pre-filled in, already we know the user, our subscriber base who are actually riding on our platform. You don't have to spend this 10, 15 minutes to explain who you are. We have used GPS technology, which is also a great advent, right? Evolution that has happened there. So precise locations are transmitted, and precisely who you are and what kind of emergency you're looking for is done through only tap of one button. So the idea is we are shaving away really very critical, almost 4 to 5 or 6 minutes from offering you a personal emergency response, which is done through a private team that we have who are only looking out for you. This is probably the most vital value proposition that we bring to our consumer base.
That does sound that way. But what were the challenges that you faced when you were creating this app, and especially in development? How did you overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, we ride on the passion that, we are going to build something from scratch. However, the very important thing on product strategy and product development is we need to listen to the voice of the customer. So we believe in practical innovation, Bonnie, which means that, of course, there are things in certain spaces where you have to be out there for 10 years down the line, something might be mainstream. Here, we are dealing with a problem which is mainstream today. So we wanted to hear the voice of our customers. And to that extent, we had been in the security, prevention aspect of the business. We have built hardware products earlier, which we had, we have around 1 million customers, for example, on that. We heard the voice of those customers, what they need in emergency response. I'll give you an example. One of our subscribers, they are so sticky to our product. They consider us so much of a lifeline that one day, the internet network in their community was down, and she could not see one feature in our app, which is called a smart check-in. It's a non-emergency daily check-in feature. She came back to us asking that, is everything right? This is how much people depend on us, basically on everyday safety for themselves. We listen to these voices. That was one of the primary aspect and inspiration of how we defined the feature set of this product. Idea was that we have to make things, at least on the onset, usability wise, the most simple way to activate. No voice required, no texting required. Just tap a button in emergency, whether you are not a native English speaker or whether you are, having a heart attack. Nobody should go through that, but things happen. You should be able to tap a button, and that's all you need to do and the help is on the way. With this principle, then we looked at the most appropriate tech stack. We talked about shaving away time. How do we do it? It has to be a fully autonomously working system right from the tap. There are 3 or 4 different things that are communicating with each other. One of them is obviously the app infrastructure, which is riding on the latest and greatest, operating system, or the phone infrastructure that is evolving every year, right, with these new releases. We have to be mindful of that. We have to incorporate the best features. At the same time, be careful about the backward compatibility with the previous version or previous operating systems which users might have. Second thing is on the cloud stack itself. What is the best way that we can have a distributed cloud architecture? We can have let's say there is an emergency that breaks out in a city. How do we deal with those peak events without having the system to slow down? So performance of this whole system to be irrespective of what kind of a demand or peak demand it might happen, users will get exactly the same kind of experience. One tap activation and help is on the way. Our monitoring stations, people who are trained completely using this, software platform, as well as know how to respond to the emergency exactly in a way. So it's a connection of 3 or 4 different systems that is happening autonomously with one tap activation. So we address the stack, the architecture from that way, top down.
So how does Red SOS ensure the safety and privacy of users' personal information during these emergency situations?
Excellent question, Bonnie, because this is obviously top of our concern, right? Every user has it. First of all, this is not an app that is actually tracking you on a daily basis. So first thing that we need to take care of, we are mindful of all the GDPR compliance issues or requirements that are there. Every data that a user saves with respect to emergency response when they need it is saved with the user's consent right up front. Every other data that is not needed, for example, a real-time location tracking, we do not do that. You only share locations when you activate in an emergency or when you are testing the app. We do not save those locations either. Emergency responders like the fire, medical, and police needs to get your real-time mapping. That's where the 21st century evolution on that system works. Even if you are on the run, they need to get your data. All of these stack selections that we do are extremely mindful of the privacy concerns of users. Number two is thanks to the industry's adoption, right? You consider, let's say, the platforms where we host our apps. We have to go through every release which a review of these privacy policies, and we would not be able to release it without prior information of any of this privacy. If we by chance want to share data, for example, they will review it and they will probably reject it. The third aspect is that, this is a continuous process. We have to stay on top. If anything changes, users need to be informed about anything that is changing. And we do not intend to save any data through our application.
Can you speak to the impact that Red SOS has had on the field of emergency response and personal safety? What kind of feedback have you gotten from people that work in that industry?
Absolutely. So a few changes, glaring changes that have happened. Number one, I was telling you that an example is that somebody is on the run. They're not static in their home location, right? In that case, how it's you think about it that, when we used to call 911 and you have to give the location that you're at your home or you're in a certain address or nearest location, etc., etc. Today, our app provides a real-time location. All a person has to do, meaning whether it is first responders first, as well as your own contacts that get notified. They don't need to have an app. They just get a text message, they click on a link, and they can see that where you are on the move, right? A very important event that has happened, which is that, emergency, no matter where you are, you get a real-time update of the location. This itself has helped tremendously. Second is because of the availability of this precise GPS location. Let's say you are not at home, you are somewhere away completely. I can't send a police responder, for example, from your hometown when you are away. So finding out precisely at that location what is the nearest responder can help tremendously shaving away that response time, right? And instead of going through a common dashboard and a common operator who is taking the call, trying to understand all the situation, it's a huge impact helping to reduce this response time. And there is one other aspect, Bonnie, if I might touch upon, is during the COVID times, we saw this need when we were actually not being in close contact with several of our relatives, our grandparents, our parents, etc., or children, and so on. So Smart Check-in is such a feature in our app, actually, which allows you to, without necessarily calling, texting, or doing anything, it's a feature where you can just tap on a button. The app itself reminds you to tap on a button, and your nearest contact is going to know that you are safe that day, right, or that week, whichever frequency you choose.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, especially when people have trouble reaching people by phone and things like that in the event of an emergency. Is Red SOS available on all platforms right now?
Yes, it is available on Android and iOS. So both platforms support Red SOS.
Well, Dr. Shub Basu, co-inventor and product advisor for Red SOS, thank you so much for joining me on Techstrong TV. We're looking forward to hearing more about Red SOS and how it's helping those stay safe in the event of an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Sure. Well, stay with us on Techstrong TV. We're going to have a lot more coming up.
So what else is going on over in the UK with cybersecurity, man? I feel so disconnected since I left the UK.
Man, I'm disconnected, period. I'm still trying to fix the shit that was going on 25 years ago. I'm so not terribly interested. There's this new thing called Chat GCP or what is it? I don't even know what it is. This AI chat generates, what's it called? Chat. Sure, you've heard of this.
Chat GPT?
That's the one.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've not even experienced anything.
Everyone's raving about it. I don't know what it is.
Don't give a shit.
Yeah. Same shit. I'm excited about what Jen Easterly had to say, because it sounds like CISA, which is a $2.3 billion agency, is significant.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. It was,
And the fact that someone from the government that's in charge of anything remotely cyber is speaking anything remotely close to logical is fucking amazing.
That was like, I did a video. I just ran to my computer. It was like, I just heard the most amazing thing. Like a high-ranking public official is actually talking complete sense and saying like, we need to build shit better rather than this endless firefighting. So I'm all, who knows? Maybe some legislation will come out of that will be, I don't know. We'll probably fuck that up, but don't know.
The penalties will be paying like extra taxes, I'm sure.
Maybe. I feel like there's benefits to doing like security as a quality thing.
Right.
Like, one of the last companies I worked for, like the engineering was so bad, like the development, that they were just, they were running through DevOps engineers and SREs like cookies with tea, because it was so poorly built, so frustrating to maintain. And the culture was so bad that they couldn't get the developers to actually do stuff properly, that all the DevOps people just quit constantly. Nothing was architected. So it was like, there's no visibility and no like holistic thinking. So nothing was architected properly. So, you had some services that had to scale and some didn't, but everything was a monolith. So everything scaled. So AWS resource was like 10 times what it should have cost. And just, all these other issues that could have saved the business loads and loads of money, and stopped us from having all these security issues and stopped us from making it so difficult to fix each of these issues. It would have been just a win-win-win, just build stuff. You have to take that extra like 5 minutes, but it's going to save you an hour, like within a month. It's not like a long, the ROI period is short. Like it's within the quarter, like just do it.
Right. And then the same thing with patching, people don't understand, like when you take a sample of internet traffic and you still see SQL Slammer floating around the internet, like, and your shit is not patched against that. Like, first of all, what are you using to carry out business? Second of all, are you in a cave somewhere? Because like we're in 2023 now.
Well, you say that. I remember like the U.S. military.
Oh God.
No, but they actually, when it came to WannaCry, they deployed. They used Tanium for this. They deployed. I want to say it was 750,000 endpoints in 38 minutes globally, including assets that were literally in fucking caves in Afghanistan, with high latency radio link ups. And yet we have companies that cannot patch their shit. Like a 6-year-old startup, and I'm seeing CVEs from 2004. Like, what?
They have TI calculators plugged into their network.
I don't know what's going on. It's like, where have you downloaded this stuff from? Like, we're an all cloud shop that literally didn't exist until 2016, and you've got vulnerabilities that are 12 years older than this company.
Yeah, I mean, and here's another thing that we battle too is when I go into a company and say, okay, you've got like 50,000 endpoints that are vulnerable to WannaCry. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And they say, oh, well, we've deemed this not a security risk because it's on the inside of our network. Like, half the people that I've dealt with in the past, like consulting, I really scratch my head. Like, what do you mean that using your admin credentials for every server in the network is fine in clear text? Oh, wait a minute, because you all use the same account, that makes it safe? Like, what the fuck? But that's the kind of shit that we get as consultants, is like those kind of justifications.
Yeah, but it's you look at media, everything's a highly sophisticated nation state sponsored cyber. It's like, dude, fucking admin PowerShell credentials all over the network in plain text, really predictable passwords, default passwords, unpatched systems. Like, it takes no time at all. So I think I mentioned the story of when we did the pen test at that university, and I'd asked them to do a pen test because I knew, like, they wouldn't allow me any visibility at all. So I just like, all right, I know these people. Let's get them and let's do a pen test. And I had zero traction with IT, so they wouldn't even give me an account for the pen testers to use. So totally black box. Nice. So what they actually did is on the website, they saw like the usernames had a fixed format. It was like 3 letters, 3 numbers, something like that.
Uh-huh.
But like, right, we're not even going to try to guess passwords. We're going to guess usernames because there's way fewer possibilities. So it was literally like the name of the universe of Salford. So we'll try Salford 123 as a password. There's bound to be one. Yeah, there are about 150, as it turns out. And they just cycled usernames. So obviously, they only tried each username once, so it never triggered any throttling of excess login attempts. And they started one day. They were supposed to test for 6 days. And on the first day in the morning, I had a couple of meetings, and around lunchtime, like they rang me up. I was like, "Yeah, well, what do you want us to do?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Try the perimeter. Try VPN first. This that." They're like, No. We're not looking for instructions. We've run out of things to compromise.
Oh my god!
They literally ran out of things to compromise. 129,000 accounts, tens of thousands of assets. 5 to 10,000 assets. They just got access to the VPN, and then they were on the local network. And then, sure enough, PowerShell scripts in the clear with admin credentials in them. So they got the ticket granting ticket. Then they got Excel files full of passwords. So like all the SaaS applications, medical records, like all kinds of stuff. So I was like, and it took anyway. And we went to the chief executive with her credit cards, travel visa, passport, and birth certificate.
Nice.
And we got some funding. Nice. But there's so many, and just like the sheer number of critical vulnerabilities. And I remember them saying things like, IT, oh no, everything's well managed. We've got endpoint management and everything. We've got very mature asset management, blah, blah, blah. And then, that's when we got the okay to get Tanium in. And I really like Tanium because it's like, we need 5,000. Because they said we had 5,000 endpoints. And Tanium from experience, because they've done this before, it's like, we'll sell you 5,000 licenses, but we'll give you 1,000 free just in case. So we plug in Tanium, it's like, let it deploy, which it takes hours, it's brilliant. And then we're like, yeah, guys, IT guys. Yeah, turns out you've got 6,000. So it's not 1,000. You literally had 1,000 computers that you didn't know about. You purchased these computers. They're on a budget somewhere. How could you not know they existed?
It's crazy. I went on a pen test, something similar to that with the Federal Reserve. And when people think about the Federal Reserve, they think about, it must be like Fort Knox, like completely secure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I was so shocked the first day I went in to do a Federal Reserve pen test, and they hand me a laptop, which is their laptop, but it's in a box, like a briefcase almost. So you take out this little laptop, and it has Kali on it. And it has like a few other things, but there's only certain buttons you're allowed to push. And the IP addresses are already in the system. Literally, when they have someone come pen test the Federal Reserve, you're paid to sit down and click start. That's it. There's no analysis. There's no digging. There's no nothing. What comes back on those reports, that's it. You're done. And that's where your money's coming from.
That's really interesting. Because they took the time to actually tailor that Kali installation. So it's like the opposite of what you're supposed to do. It's like, we know everything that's wrong, so we're going to limit the scope to what's right.
Yeah.
And we're not going to allow you to go anywhere beyond or find anything new.
Or credentialed.
Yeah. Well, it's technically a third-party pen test.
Yeah. And when I went to the Federal Reserve, I went through like 3 days of this SF-86 from hell on a federal level, like federal financial institution level. Yeah. And it was crazier than my military SF-86. But once I got that security clearance for the Federal Reserve and sat down behind the computer, I thought, wait a minute, I went through all that shit to press that button? Are you kidding me right now? Like you're asking me if I'm a good person, good enough to press a button. Like, it was just really unbalanced. Oh yeah, and I was literally thinking, like, I wonder what would happen if I went outside the scope, what I would find. And then it clicked in my head. I was like, wait a minute, this is a government institution.
Prison.
Right.
The answer is prison.
Right. Yeah. But even so, like, if you went outside the bounds, I'm sure that you would find all kinds of crazy shit. And that's why they have it so narrowed down. And I feel like a lot of companies now do that with pen tests. Well, like, don't touch this shit because it's critical. We need that for operations. And I'm thinking, but wait a minute, wouldn't you want to test that?
You should be really worried about it.
Right. Yeah. Right. But they're so worried about downtime and operations and To me, that tells me you don't have a backup system for high availability.
Yeah.
And two, you're not confident in your own security work.
And I think that's why they get hit so hard, right? Again, back to Karen or Doris or Bob from marketing, clicking one wrong email and the whole house of cards falls down. It's like, I doubt it was just them clicking that one email.
Right.
Cause
a chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly. They jumped from, there were credentials somewhere that got into a different subnet, and you had a gateway that had default passwords, and then they jumped to a different subnet, and it's a bunch of servers that weren't patched, so they used that as a jump box.
But they protected all the VLANs, so they're good.
I highly doubt that, actually.
Never mind, you can VLAN hop in like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So let's talk about goals for 2023. You have any big goals or anything that you're aiming for this year?
Make money.
I hear you.
Well, so that was. I just got frustrated with kind of the CISO game and getting that traction, and it's a lot of work, and you're very
it's a thankless job.
Yeah, it's very thankless. I think like the one thing that makes it worth it is your team. I loved my team at the last job, and we're still all connected on WhatsApp, and everyone's got new jobs, so happy with that. But yeah, it's thankless. It's stressful because no matter how much traction you have, and they tell you not to worry about it, if something bad happens, it's like it's your job to take this fall. But it just seems very difficult. Like you're always fighting for change. And so the last, and I finished that in July, and most of the work that I've been getting since has been like public speaking. And it's just been kind of random, public speaking and writing articles and stuff. So I thought, you know what? I kind of like this because I'm a bit of a procrastinator. I've actually like a lot of like motivational videos and stuff this year and started reading a lot more, which got me a bit more energized. But
Gary V. You need to check out Gary V.
Yeah, I love Gary V, Les Brown, all the motivational speakers and stuff.
Yeah.
Even Andrew Tate, but we won't go there. He's very uncouth, he's not very diplomatic, and he's not very.
He doesn't sugarcoat shit.
He doesn't sugarcoat shit. He's a bit OTT, and way too freaking braggy. Like it's not classy, dude. But I don't actually disagree with him on very much. But doing a lot of that, and naturally, I think I'm quite lazy. So to actually get up and do a grind and do writing, and so public speaking is quite cool because someone like an agent calls you up, hey, can you this date, this time, this much money? Yeah, all right. And you take a phone call and you get on a plane, you show up at a conference, have a few beers, do a talk, go home. So it's very easy to manage your time. And you have, the client is expecting something, so you have that pressure. So that kind of like fits me, even though I'm getting better at my own laziness, managing my own laziness now. But so I was like, that's kind of appealing. And I also feel the funny thing is that it was like at the time, like 3-4 months ago, it almost seemed like an easy way out. But now the more I think about it, the more it's like what I want to do, what we all agree needs to get done. It's very difficult to get traction. It's very difficult to do it in practice. And I think, weirdly, people see it as this whole new thing. It's never been presented that way. You go to university, any vendor, any conference, what's security? Oh, it's zero trust and testing and SOX. And so this whole idea of just building stuff right in the first place, so it's not a massive shit show that keeps falling down and costs you loads of money and exposes you to loads of risk and requires 1 million SOC analysts and a shit ton of tools. It's really foreign to people. So it's like, well, I'm at a point where I'm going to have to like kind of market this forever to try and find someone who is interested and will give me a job for it. And then if they leave, then I'm screwed because they'll get rid of me right after. So I was like, well, why don't I talk about it and actually get, do that marketing, but A, I'm getting paid to talk about it, but B, I'm creating an awareness that could help other people that actually want to deliver the service. And I mean, if someone sees me talking, it's like, that actually makes perfect sense. and they want to hire me, great. It's over the last 5 years, I've gotten way more traction with jobs talking to like CEOs and CFOs than I have to CIOs and CISOs.
Yep.
As soon as you start talking business, like techie people get threatened. Like I don't want to say like threatened or confused or just don't get it, or they sometimes it's not malicious, but they just don't understand. It's like, because you're protecting a business, you have to understand what they do, where they're going, what they'll need.
Right.
Yeah, I had a consulting gig recently, and the CIO was really confused why I was talking to the COO. It's like, because you guys are going to do things, customers and requirements and regions and compliance needs, and we need to plan the work
operations. What
the business needs is there at the right time. And they're like, no, we just need policies. No,
of course.
So the speaking thing is interesting. I might just do that for a while. See, because last year, like I had a decent amount of it just kind of fall, not enough to make a living off of, but it's mostly fallen into my lap. So I figure, well, if I start pushing it a bit more, plus everyone loves to hear how the FBI taped stuff to my testicles. I don't know. If it's a laugh. Yeah. Sorry.
The speaking part of it, man, like when I was in the UK and even now, since I've started getting traction here, like the speaking part of it, I really enjoy. And, I make more business impact in speaking than I do actually in a business.
Yes. And that's, because you're talking to like 100 people in the room, right. And I don't know, 10 of them are going to go and do something. Right. That's more than I could do. And I think quite often you go into a company and it's like, this isn't right, and you've got a lot of stuff. It's not working. You're spending a lot of money here. It's not really having much effect. The last one I looked into is like, oh, give us some more policies and stuff. So, well, you have a Jira workflow here that has 130 something security issues queued up. You've got 7 that are being worked on. You've got 0 that have ever been finished, and no one's touched any of it in 19 months. So I don't think more stuff is what you need. Like, clearly this is not working. You've not integrated this into your business process. Where was I going? So, but if you point that out, no matter how politely you do it, you call my baby ugly. Get out.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I think I made a living at that for a while.
Yeah. Whereas if you are speaking, and especially I think if you're lighthearted about it, and because I always thought my talk's like quite funny, and then I get into the more serious stuff, people they like you and then they listen to you. Mm-hmm. I think the same person that built that security team or function, whatever, that doesn't really work, that same person who would have thrown you out for calling his baby ugly will listen to you, take it as their own idea, and then go and try and do some of it.
Right.
Because there's not that, I didn't attack him. I just told him some stuff and now he's going to do it like it's his own idea. So I'm actually affecting more change.
Right.
So that's what I really, really like about it. And I think as tired as I am with like tech and security, just the fact that, we are getting into this, like, I think is a real societal problem now, that we're just building this house of cards and we're becoming increasingly dependent on it. That's a bit of a calling. I enjoy that.
For sure.
So I'm going to focus more on the speaking and hopefully some training will come off the back. So I'm still going to do like 2-3 videos on LinkedIn every week, just kind of with snippets and thoughts. I'm going to structure kind of long form version of that and maybe give that away as a course or a seminar or something.
So there's a platform, a new platform called, I want to say it's teammate.io. And basically what it is a platform where people who are like specialists or like technical experts can go and set up an account. And what happens is people will pay for your time through teammate.io to spend this one-on-one time with you. Give advice, whatever.
Like a mentoring thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, something like that would be really cool. But what I found like the most, I guess, fulfilling for me with like the speaking is the fact that I could go to like a big venue and give a talk. But then out of that big venue, I'll have 3 or 4 other talks that will come out on a smaller scale from people that were there. And I think that's really cool to be invited to a company, after they go to the conference and they see this, to get invited to a company and help them internally. but the environment over there is much different than it is here when it comes to cybersecurity. Like here,
UK versus States, you mean?
Yeah, totally.
I'm very curious about this.
So the conferences I've been to, they're not as jam packed as the ones that I went to in the UK. Like even Black Hat. Here it's a little bit bigger, but the smaller conferences, like some of the ones I did for Techstrong, like the crowds don't come out like they do in the UK. And I don't know if that's because it's more, I guess, acceptable over there, or like people are embracing security more over there than they are here. Okay. But I think the general attitude for the public and people, I've interviewed a lot of people, was the fact that they expect it to come from the store protected, and they have no idea what happens after that. Yeah. So when I talk to people at conferences and I give them the screenshots of this is how your shit in your house is attacking you, they're like, wait a minute, what? Yeah. But over there, the response was different. Like people automatically assumed that and knew that already. But it's just, I don't know if it's maybe the ego here is a little bit bigger or what, but people in the UK seem to be more accepting of cybersecurity and principles given to them rather than here.
Yeah, well, I think like Americans are really good at doing things on a massive scale, but the thinking is quite like black and white quite often, whereas here people think much more nuanced and maybe a bit more skeptical, but they don't have that boldness that the Americans have to, like if they're like, well, we're going to build this over here, and it's going to be like, fuck that, you guys can't even like fix the pothole over there. We're not damn. Right. We're not doing that. Let's go to the pub, have a pint.
Exactly. And that's what I miss about there. I miss the camaraderie, and I miss the actual community. The cybersecurity community over there is a lot tighter than here. And we have a lot more land to deal with, a lot more people. Yeah. But I enjoyed the compactness and being able to go to conferences. People were intelligent and could carry on conversations. Like I do miss that.
You can't shoot stuff here though.
True. And it seems like every state in the union here in the U.S. in 2021, I've yet to figure out what happened in 2021 that made them think that this was a good idea. But the government and every little state like Texas, Tennessee, some others, a lot of others.
I like how the little state.
Yeah, so they had a conceal and carry license where you had to go to a classroom and then you had to go to a shooting range and prove you could handle a weapon before you carry it concealed. In 2021, they took that requirement and said, you know what, we don't think that's important. Everybody can carry concealed or open.
I think there was actually a Supreme Court ruling.
It's crazy, right? I mean,
which I think I love how I'm amazed by the U.S. Constitution. I'm amazed at a 300-year-old document, and you look at like the kind of tyranny and oppression and censorship and all the stuff that's going on in like mainstream media, social media, international geopolitics. These guys 300 years ago wrote a text that is still bang on, right? Unbelievably bang on today. And it's incredible, but I don't think they. The flip side of that is I don't think they accounted for all the mental health issues and
idiocracy,
the degradation of society. They probably assumed people were a bit more responsible, but I fully support the right. But you have some people don't realize you have some. So in Europe, you are allowed to own guns, and you are technically under European law allowed to carry guns, but the national restrictions are much. It's now a gun show, though. Are much stricter. So in the UK, like no semi-automatic handguns unless it's a 22. No semi-auto rifles, anything like. In Italy, you can have AR-15s all you like. Yeah, the one weird thing in Italy is like there's this confusion because like civilians can't own military calibers, so they just like put like 0.5 mil extra length to the shell casing, and boom, you're okay now. But other than that, you can have just about anything. Czech Republic, until like 5 years ago, had a higher carry rate than percentage of population than the US did.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But you do have licensing. You have to have medical exam. You have to be police vetted. You can but once you have a license. I can go into Italy. I can walk into a gun store in Italy and grab a gun put it on the counter, give him cash, show my license. He makes a photocopy of it and walk out in under a minute. You know, I don't have to wait 3 days or.
It took me 2 hours this past weekend to get a shotgun.
There you go.
And I had just bought a handgun like 4 days earlier, and it took me literally 5 minutes for the background check.
Oh, okay.
But this time, because I went to the same store that I bought the previous one from, the same chain, and it took me 2 hours. And I was like, that is so weird. But what Tennessee has done is they check. Well, yeah, the length of the check was crazy because, you go from immediate approval to, well, wait a minute, we got to think about this for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And the guy right before me had got denied. So I think it might have had something to do with the fact that he got denied and then they ran mine right after his. Okay. It might be a frequency algorithm or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. But there's some weird things as well where like I think they've got 72 hours, and if they don't get back to you, it's an automatic okay.
ATF, yeah. The ATF has to come back within 72 hours. If they don't come back with a comment in 72 hours, the store has to give it to you.
Yeah. So it's very kind of unstructured and messy. And there's a lot of kind of like defaults and loopholes and stuff. Whereas here it's very regimented. Yeah. What a lot of people in Europe don't really like fiercely anti, because you don't see guns, but they're out there. Like France, baguettes, cheese, ham, croissants, 32 guns per 100 people.
Right.
There's a fuck ton of guns in France,
They're still afraid of the Germans.
I don't think they'd raise a finger if they showed up, but anyway. But so I like the idea of having that kind of minimal check, because otherwise things do get out of control. But I understand the Constitution. Like I understand it's that incompatibility with you can't impose checks because that the checking mechanism is a way for you to potentially disarm us. And the whole thing says you shall not infringe.
And it's so crazy because that document that you're talking about, the Constitution, is such a beautiful document. But what people don't understand is there's more than just one or two amendments on there. It's a shit ton of stuff on a piece of paper. And all we focus on are the first two amendments. Forget the rest of it.
Yeah. Because some of them are fairly recent. Like the 2-term president limit is way down the list, isn't it?
Yeah. Way down the list.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to avoid having a king, because at one point they even offered to give George Washington kingship in the U.S., but he refused it. He said, "I don't want to be king," and because he was a general, and so he ended up taking over as president. But he was actually they were tossing around the idea of making him a king.
Okay. All right. Do you know how many amendments to the Constitution have been proposed?
Oh, I'm sure 1 million.
More than 11,000, but only 27 ratified. So it's not many.
Well, that document supposedly withstands time, but I hate to say it, the terms that we used and in the context of the way that document was written, we can't really match that up to a lot of shit that goes on today. And I really wish that they would preserve that document and keep that structure, but maybe update some shit. I mean, we need a firmware update on that Constitution, because that shit's not working.
What would you update?
I would update a lot of stuff. I would update.
Well, I think actually the principles I see would work, but it's just that they've been perverted.
Right. They've been so what's happened with the Constitution is the same thing that happens with the Bible. You get all these people's hands on a document, and they relay the information and translate it to whatever suits their agenda or their motives.
Yeah.
And the rest of the shit they leave out.
Where does it say that? This line here about the goat, that means kill them.
right. Exactly. Man bastardizes pretty much everything. And the Constitution is no different. I'm a Freemason, and the Constitution is golden to me. That might as well be the 10 Commandments. But as a country and as a government, they've totally demolished what used to be the Constitution and bastardized it to whatever their motive or their agenda for their platform is.
You're going to get censored here. Be careful.
I'm sure I'm going to be like cancel culture at some point, but it'll happen.
There's worse things you could say.
Exactly. Well, man, we've come to the end of the hour. It's always a pleasure to have you on, man, and touch base and catch up with old friends.
Yeah, I'll come up with more crap to say for next time.
Awesome. We'll plan another episode, and maybe for next month, and maybe we can get Kevin to jump on with us too.
I've not seen Kevin in ages. That would be cool. Yeah.
Let's dig him up.
My problem is because, well, Kevin's a bit like me, but less extreme. But my problem is I want to fix the fundamentals, and it's been 25 years and shit just ain't happening. So I don't have much. I come up with like new arguments to do it, but ultimately it's the same.
It's the same old problem. We're trying to solve the same problem we were trying to solve over 15 years ago. And this shit is
I'm coming up with like additional business benefits or improve the communication skills, but the stuff that kind of a security tech audience relates to, I don't have much more to tell you.
But if you tried conveying that audibly and vocally while dressed in a Smurf outfit, because I bet the point would go across. Might want to try that.
I feel like that's a dare.
It's a dare.
Quite tall for a Smurf, though.
It'd be awesome, though. All right, man. Well, I'm going to end the
Elmo outfit.
Elmo would be much better, I think. But you have to have the talking hands.
In one of my presentations, I used this meme of Elmo. And it was like Elmo with a bunch of fruits and stuff, fruit and vegetables, and it was like, good build practices, hardening configuration, blah blah blah, and the massive pile of cocaine here is like EDR, XDR, SIEM, all the security tech, and obviously the next slide is Elmo going.
Wolf of Wall Street style.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome.
All right, man.
Take care of yourself, and we'll be talking soon. Take it easy, Greg.
Right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to CISO Talk. CISO Talk might look a little bit different than you've seen in the past, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm joined by our new co-host and longtime colleague and friend, Jennifer JJ Manila. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, Mitch. Hi, everybody.
Now, you're not new to our CISO Talk audience because you've been on several panels at RSA, on virtual panels and speaking on Techstrong events, and a lot of other speaking at RSAC and conferences and things like that. So there are a number of folks in the security world that already know you.
Yes, and I'm so sorry, everybody, about that.
And you're just going to have to get to know you better. They're going to have the opportunity to do that. So we're going to spend a little bit of time. And first, I want to pay thanks and homage to Matt Newfield, who we've been working with. Alan Schimmel and I and Matt have been working with CISO Talk for a number of years, multiple episodes, and building the program to where it is. And Matt's got a very busy schedule. I'm sure he'll be back as a guest because we love him and appreciate that all he's done for us. And we're kind of taking this now to the next place. So we're going to have some format changes and maybe some new topics and things like that. And we'll get into that next. JJ, first, I'd love to have you introduce yourself to the audience. I think most folks know I'm CTO at Techstrong Group. I also am a principal and founder of our research division, Techstrong Research. And, you and I have worked together, as I mentioned, as colleagues in security at security products way back when. And so they know enough about me, but I would really love for you to talk more about the kind of work that you've been doing. It's evolved to some interesting places, and now with your own company that you're doing. So jump right in there.
Sure. Well, I think probably the most relevant pieces are, I've worked in technology for a very, very, very long time. I'm not going to age myself with that number. And I've worked in security for approaching 20 years at this point. So, and through that time, a lot of what I've done is kind of work in architecture between groups. Sometimes it's between two different technical groups. Sometimes it's between executive leadership and then the technical resources. Sometimes it's between the security team and the networking team. And a lot of my experience throughout that time, and 20 years or so, has been really heavy in the network security side. But as the perimeter has changed, that's morphed into being a little bit more holistic view in security architecture. And more recently, a lot of stuff in zero trust. And so that's kind of one of my passions, along with a lot of the wireless security technologies. And wireless for me is not just Wi-Fi, it's all kinds of stuff. But I think just because of where we are moving as humans and where we're moving as industries and security, those technologies become very important and are often misunderstood. So a lot of the zero trust stuff has been fun. For me, it's not a marketing buzzword. It really is real. We are doing it. It's a thing. But I think there's just so much misinformation so much marketing hype that there's a lot of opportunity for us to have conversations around what that actually means, and then how to do it, and when and where and how it's appropriate to do it, and take bite-sized projects. So that's been a lot of what I'm doing. Part of that involves the Cloud Security Alliance, who has a zero trust research group and working group. So I'm in the leadership team with that, doing several projects as well as some of their IoT stuff. So yeah, that's how I've been spending my time for the past 20 years, and zero trust for the past 2 or 3.
It's been a lot of fun to be sort of a sidecar to the journey that you've been on, and being part of that as a friend and colleague, and seeing how far it's evolved. Because I mean, and you've worked with so many companies in your capacity, both as a solution provider, kind of systems integrator in the security world, now as an advisor to CISOs and to organizations, whether it's one-on-one or, as you talked about, working with multiple groups. It's a tough gig. CISOs, security people don't have easy jobs. I'm not telling them anything they don't know. But I'm curious from your perspective, because you spend a lot of time being an advisor to folks. Why do they need an advisor? What are they looking for from you that you're able to kind of fulfill, that they can't figure out themselves or get other ways?
Well, and I wanted, let me qualify that a little bit. I don't want to say that it's because they can't figure it out themselves. I just think that everybody has priorities in their day, especially when you're a CISO, right? You're or a professional with CISO type responsibilities, because a lot of people I work with, don't necessarily have a CISO title, or they do have a CISO title, but they've never been formally trained and had any type of mentorship in that area, don't know how to build a new program. So just a little asterisk of, I tend to slide in when people just need a little extra help, because sometimes there's not enough hours in the day. And it is interesting, you mentioned, I worked with an integrator. I still work with multiple integrators now, but working with an integrator for over 20 years, as well as consulting with IONS, who's pretty heavy in the security space. So I've worked with, at this point, thousands of customers across every industry, ranging from, the charter school down the street to large universities, every tier of federal government into Department of Energy and Department of Defense, lots of financial, lots of healthcare. And so, throughout that time, there's been different sizes of organizations and different maturities in terms of their people and processes and expertise. So it's been really fun. I'm a very non-judgy person, because you kind of get what you get, and everybody's doing the best they can do. So it's really been fun to just kind of get in and work with somebody, or work with the team in an organization, see, what knowledge they have, what resources they have, and leverage that in moving their security programs forward in their various technical projects. But yeah, I think there's just, and especially now, I mean, gosh, and I really don't even get into, I don't consider myself cloud native. So a lot of the application security, I think this is fun because, you and I have known each other for a long time. I think approaching 20 years at this point, and, you've always been a kind of like the software and application side, and I've always been over on the networking side. So this is a pretty fun, I think, pairing of those expertises together for something that's pretty well-rounded. But yeah, it's been so much fun working with people. And I just think there is opportunity to, use platforms like this and our relationship and CISO Talk, and bring people in and just kind of amplify that and give, a much broader audience the benefit of all of that experience, not just our experience, but the experience of the different professionals we're going to be bringing on and talking to.
I think it's a different take on CISO Talk, because with Matt, we're talking to who someone is a CISO. He might have been an example of somebody you might work with or advise. But we're going to kind of have the conversation we're having, even though it's not with a specific CISO or maybe with a guest, but these are the conversations that are happening, right? And people are trying to fill in the gaps, confirm. By the way, one of the loneliest jobs is being the CISO or the CEO or the CIO, CTO, right? Because you talk to all the same people in your organization and the vendor community you work with. Sometimes you just need to talk to someone else and get their take on it, kind of validate, learn, change your mind, add to what you're thinking. it's, you don't want to kind of get caught in that echo chamber you live and work in every day. And I think that's kind of what one of our values in CISO Talk is, expanding that conversation on a topic that's very near and dear and relevant to our audience and what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well,
good. Let's do this. And thank you for taking some time telling us about your work, talking about your work. As you've gone from being a frequent guest to co-host. And one of the reasons why I do shows like this, and first of all, I love talking with people and collaborating with you and people like you. This is another way to do that, and it's a fun and an engaging way to do that. I kind of feel like, for me, our audiences are tuning in for the reasons we talked about. They're also it's part of their career development, right? They're learning. I want to know more about Zero Trust. I've heard the buzzword. I'm trying to implement it. Or cloud native and Kubernetes security. What the heck is that? And how do I deal with that as a security professional? Give me some pointers, some tips, kind of fill in some gaps. So we're really helping people both advance in their careers as well as doing work in their job. And I don't want to overstate that as because I watched that episode of CISO Talk, I became a PhD. No, but this is all part of our continuing development. That's the one of the things that really motivates me about doing this. I'm curious, when we talked about let's join together and co-host this, what are some of the things you're interested in happening? Why you're motivated to do this?
Oh man. Well, I think if I had to slap a number on it, I would say probably 70 to maybe even 80% of the questions I get asked are questions that peer professionals or peer organizations have. So a lot of people, in the space, a lot of professionals they're all seeking the same type of information. And so I think it's a great, easy way to share that. I think there's also, if we get into this little bit of interpersonal thing here, I think there's a lot of pressure on CISOs. And again, security professionals in general. And I think there's this expectation that they're supposed to know everything and do everything. And that's frustrating because, again, there's only so many hours in the day. And for as long as I've worked in tech, there's still a whole just whole circles, there's whole huge parts of the Venn diagram that I read a whole Kubernetes book and I still do not understand what it does. Right. So, I think part of this is just having a community and just saying, I don't know everything. Where can I get that information? How can I ask the questions? And fill those gaps and just in a meaningful way instead of from vendors. And I'm going to get on a little soapbox here for a second. Let me just pop up here and say one of my points of frustration. So, although I've worked with an integrator, the integrator and the integrators that I work with still sell multiple products and multiple competing products in a space. And so, for 20 years, when I walked into a client, it's been out of this whole pantry of things or grocery store of solutions that I could bring to you. What do you need and what fits for you? And that's fun, right? Because I don't get, I was never in sales, so I never got paid for selling anything, but, I am never attached to a product and never worked in that space. And I think, architects and consultants, have a little bit of an advantage in that way. In that we can pull anything off of the shelf versus a manufacturer and a manufacturer team who no matter how technically competent they are, because a lot of them really truly add value. They speak at conferences, they write blogs, they have a lot of valuable information. At the end of the day, the way they are fed and the way they eat is through selling their product. And so there's always just a little bit of bias in a certain things. They're certainly never going to, show a mirror and show what their product blatantly can't do. And so I think that's the other kind of value of having a forum like this is we have the opportunity to share this knowledge very unbiased. We're not here to pitch products. We're not here to sell products. We're here to just purely educate and share and build community. And I think there's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value in that for me, personally. I like sharing. I like collaborating, and I like educating people.
And of course, vendors, technology providers, play an essential role, right? We couldn't do this without them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They are biased because they have to be. That's just built into the nature of selling what you have to sell. And that is the role of folks who are consultants or analysts or lots of different roles, integrators many times, where they can kind of say, well, here's the options, and let's look at what's the best fit for you. And that's hopefully where I think, with you and I, we can sort of fine tune maybe what some of those questions might be to ask the technology providers, or maybe ask your own organization. I know that's a great product, but let's step back and talk about why we want to use Kubernetes, whatever that is, if we don't understand it yet, and then how we're going to figure out what we need to do, and maybe what some of the important questions to ask ourselves are, so we know when we go back to talk to the vendor. So there's a lot of those things I think we can definitely pursue and kind of provide value on this show. So you're passionate. Let's talk about some topics, because this show is kind of about the show, and the format, first of all, is changing. Matt and I and Alan have done CISO Talk primarily as a panel show, where we get 4 to 6, maybe sometimes squeeze in a 7th once in a while, to pick a topic and sort of get a plethora of ideas and perspectives about that particular topics. Sometimes it's maybe been a lot of vendors, technology providers on the show. Could be folks like yourself, more independent or a practitioner, to try to get a diverse perspective. And we have lots of shows and formats for that. Here we're going to go to more of a, let's meet with a person about a topic, someone who's probably doing that work. Maybe they might be from a vendor sometimes, probably more on the practitioner side, and dig a little bit deeper into that. And I think that'll give us a different perspective for the folks that are watching and follow CISO Talk. And we'll explore that, and we'll evolve and change our format too, as we find what we think works well. Our audience tells us works well. Make sense to you, JJ?
Yeah, this show has been formatted to fit your new brain.
Oh, good. Now we just need to fill that in with some good stuff, right? At least mine, anyway. Well, you mentioned zero trust and network security. I'm sorry, wireless security, of course, as well as network security. Those are great passions of yours. I'm sure network security, wireless, and zero trust are going to be some big topics. Is there any other things kind of top of mind that, I don't know if it'll be the next show or not, but somewhere in the collection of shows that we put together, some topics that you're really excited to explore? I mean, I have a few too, but I would love to get your perspective.
Yeah, I have a ton. And again, I think the core of my being, stems from that networking side. But having worked with network access control, so for me, this kind of shift into zero trust is really just a new way to do something like network access control. We're just kind of extending that air quote perimeter into the cloud, and working further up the OSI stack than we had before. But fundamentally, it's all the same stuff. It's just slightly more complicated now. So that that's at the core of what I've liked to do, because it's complex. And it's one of those things, especially zero trust, you have to fit all of the puzzle pieces together. So for as much as I love, network security, that is always to be taken in a holistic kind of architectural view. And so I think part of the fun of the topics, that we've talked about, maybe sprinkling in here, is that we have the opportunity to look at these things not through the microscope of just the one thing, but how does this fit into everything else? Because, for years now, and especially now with zero trust, we can't have a network security conversation without discussing endpoints, without discussing the cloud perimeter, without discussing things even like maybe SD-WAN technologies. So, I think all of it fits together so well. And so a lot of the topics, I think we can kind of like dive into certain things, especially if we have a mechanism maybe for all of you guys watching and listening, where maybe you can give us some feedback and comments about, hey, get more into this and we can dive more into something. But I think back at that kind of 5,000 to 10,000 foot view, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that we're struggling with now, that I see organizations struggling with and my clients are struggling with, which is things, for example, for all of the convergence we've been pursuing within the different pieces of technology, we have some things that we really need to be divergent with and treat a little bit differently. For example, operational technology and OT is handled very, very differently than enterprise IT. And this is one of the challenges I've had in kind of helping with some of the organizations writing frameworks for Zero Trust. It's like, oh, all of the vendors want to put IoT and OT and what we would do on just enterprise lands all together, and maybe even address them with one product set and one kind of overarching strategy and umbrella. And those of us that work deeply in these spaces are going, no, this is not how we do it. And just because the vendors are pushing it to you that way does not mean that's the appropriate way for you to consume that. And so part of it is, you know, I think these topics about educating, if you're a CISO, if you're a security architect or other security professional, where are these areas that you need to diverge some things and keep them separate instead of converge them? I'm using, enterprise IT and OT is one example. We have, different opportunities for some of the stuff we're considering with cloud and on-prem that might need to stay separated. We have different things on the networking side. We're doing a lot of stuff with like private cellular now, which is cool. I love it, but it's its own can of worms from a security standpoint and from a compliance standpoint. I mean, it's a good can of worms. These are like the worms you would want to eat. Maybe they're fried and like breaded in panko or something. They're good worms.
They're French worms. They're French worms. Like yeah. Escargot worms.
Escargot worms. Wait, escargot are snails.
They are. I know.
Yes, they are. You know what?
Not a good one, but
I'm having like flashbacks to this lovely restaurant in San Francisco we walked to a few blocks from Moscone, and they had like the best escargot I've ever had. But anyway, I digress. So I think there's all kinds of stuff from like, when I work with CISOs, it's we might be talking about pen test, right? And maybe it's an application pen test, maybe it's a network pen test, maybe it's all of the above. There are actually precursors and things we do before a pen test that are more cost effective and more cost effective and more effective. And so there's all these different things. I think it's like what CISOs should know about, fill in the blank. And then we can kind of share some of that information for, if you were here and making the decision, here's really the bubbled up version, the takeaway that you need to know without having to go do, 8 hours of research or interview 4 people and then try to go fact check and see if what they told you was right. So those topics are everything from, zero trust, starting projects, identifying projects, working through a maturity model, because frankly, all of the documents we have and frameworks and everything we have on zero trust is written for the federal government, and it's complete just rubbish if you're in the enterprise space. So we're reworking a lot of that. I think there's lots of opportunities for, how do you pick a framework if you don't have a controller or compliance framework currently, and how are you implementing that? How does that vary between different industries? I love those conversations. I think there's so many of these professionals that have gotten stuck into a CISO-ish position. And again, haven't necessarily had any type of formal mentorship or training and don't know where to start. And I think it's, there's that feeling of, well, I'm supposed to know because I'm here now. But I think we can, help fill in those gaps and the cracks there a little bit. Yeah, there's so many great topics. I mean, I could just keep going. I mean, there's just my brain's exploding with ideas over here.
I'm excited to get into that too. One of the things I'm hoping to do is maybe I can make some kind of connections in the software world, because the world for security CISOs, engineers, has changed, right? All of a sudden, it's like there's application security and APIs and cloud native, and we're kind of getting into the software stuff, even though we aren't software architects ourselves or writing code, though we may have people doing scripting and things in our security ops center. You mentioned Kubernetes and cloud native. What's interesting is if you look at that from a security perspective, cloud native is kind of like, it's a philosophy and approach, like zero trust is a philosophy and approach. It's not a technology. There are technologies to use to accomplishment. You mentioned Kubernetes being one. But what it's really about, and I think relevant for us, is, you know, for a long time, the network had perimeters and things that we could protect. And usually there's an edge of the application, there's an edge of the network, there's an edge of where the firewall and where the application firewall is, and content filtering and all kind of things happening. And applications we got into through, you know, port 80 or SSL or APIs, et cetera, that were kind of the external hard layer to the soft interior of the application. And what cloud native is the network has come inside of the app, because now apps are built in really small pieces, things called microservices, and they all talk over the network. It's an internal network inside a Kubernetes cluster or across clouds or across whatever, but it's network communications. And so we have, like, instead of one big app or several medium or big size app, we have lots of little things that are moving around and changing all the time, but they're all talking over this network, either amongst themselves or to other things. So we just start taking some of the ideas and bringing those inside to the application itself and how it communicates over this through the API fabric, and applying a lot of the security principles that we know and have tried, and also some new things. So we'll make some of those connections and hopefully make the world of cloud native a little less mysterious, because it's actually not that mysterious when we kind of peel apart that onion. And there's a lot of things that we can bring to the table as security professionals and software engineers to start to connect the dots to go, okay, I get it. Now I see what that is. Here's how I can help you, or you can help us, or whatever that might be. So I'm hoping we get to go there together. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, you know, Mitch, something just popped up while you were saying that, because one of the things I hear, but both on the application security side, and then just in general, kind of broad spectrum statement here, is that, you know, a lot of the consulting engagements, a lot of the professionals I talk to are apologetic to me as a consultant, right? Oh, we know we're supposed to be doing this, but we're behind. We know that all of our peers are doing this, and we just aren't there yet. And they're almost embarrassed or apologetic about it. And I feel like this feeling about, you know, most of the time, it's almost like, you know, where they say social media, what do they say about social media? That it's
FOMO, fear of being left out, or whatever it is.
Well, it's like you see the best. People only put their best, you know, like persona on social media. Like, look how great I am, or look at this, you know, yacht I'm hanging out on, and they're, you know, not showing you the. I'm not even going to come up. I had examples. I'm going to leave that alone. But, you know, they're not showing the bad stuff that they're dealing with in their life. And I feel like the security industry is a little bit like this, that there's this difference between what's real and what people think is ideal. And so there's this expectation gap where a lot of people, professionals and companies and boards, feel like they're behind, or they're not doing something the right way. And, you know, their peer organizations are doing something else, or whatever. And, you know, I've seen so many case studies, whether it's something on the application side or on the network side, or just some broad security product. I've seen so many case studies where the company that's listed in the case study did buy the product, or they were given it, but they haven't even deployed it yet. And so it's like, you know, all of these other organizations are looking at that going, oh man, they're already doing this, you know, cool WYSIWYG shiny thing. And we haven't even done, you know, our basic stuff. And one of my other soapbox things is I feel like everybody gets so dazzled with the shiny objects. It's like, oh, let's do zero trust, and they don't even have basic segmentation done, whether that's in workload segmentation or network segmentation. And so there's kind of like this foundational knowledge that I think, Mitch, you and I are going to be able to do some cool stuff with, of all of like the shiny objects are just extensions of foundational pieces. And you really need to at least understand the foundational pieces enough to go build that if you don't have it, if you want to do the shiny things that are up here. And so I think that's fun, because that's something that kind of, those pieces fit together both on the application and cloud side and on-prem side. And I think that's another great opportunity for, a show like this with hosts like us and guests like the ones we're going to be bringing on. I think that's going to be great.
Put the building blocks in place, so it's not a shiny penny on the ground, but it's a bright star in the sky, right? This is how we get there. Well, let's wrap things up. I do want to mention too that we have some new URLs that we can use. You can find this show, if you haven't already, on Techstrong.tv. There's a series menu and it says the CISO Talk underneath that. You can also get it through URL CISOTalkshow.com. So you can go directly to it. And we also are delivering this in podcast format now. So CISOTalkPodcast.com. Go straight to it. It's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. So you'll get audio and video on Apple if you want to watch the video that way too. So we're getting out there in lots of mechanisms, lots of paths for delivering content. And there's always good old Techstrong.tv, and our episodes will be about twice a month. We'll be doing some live roundtables like we've done in the past, and have a lot of good time and good fun doing it. So JJ, I am super excited, if you can't tell already, about doing this with you and learning from you and co-creating and doing some great content together and bringing in some kind of fabulous guests that will be part of this journey with all of us together.
The feeling is mutual, especially about the learning. But Mitch, I have to tell you, I can't tell when you're excited, because you're always just kind of calm like this. Is this your excited face? Is this excited, Mitch?
I am always excited, so it looks the same.
Oh.
When I'm joking around, that means I'm having fun.
Okay, good, great.
But I'm definitely having excited.
Yes, well, we will be. If you don't like joking, we will be very serious on here. In our very last episode. Yes, so just wait for that one and watch that.
That'll be the end of the series when we're like. But yes. All right.
It's been fun. I'm excited about our next one and getting some guests in here. It's going to be amazing.
Well, and thanks to our team at Techstrong Group, our executive producer Jody, and our video production team, the web team, everybody, graphics and promotion and production, everybody helps put this on with us. So it's we might be the two visible folks in the show, but there are a lot of folks that are a big part of helping create this, as well as our guests that are on. So JJ, it's great doing this with you, and look forward to our next CISO Talk. Come back and join us in a couple of weeks, and we'll have an episode 2 of the 2.0. It'll be 2, but it'll be the next episode of CISO Talk.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, everybody. I'm very pleased that I'm being joined today by Mike Lukides, who is VP of Emerging Technology Content with O'Reilly Media. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks.
Good to have you here. I want to get to this report that you all just recently issued about what your readers are interested in. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is at O'Reilly.
Okay, I've been at O'Reilly for a long time, since 1990, actually. Tim says I was the first editor, which I actually disagree with, but we can fight out. But my current role is that I watch out for new technologies that we need to be that we need to be covering. I tend to, wrangle the people who are on the acquisitions and editorial staff to find the right people to write about them or teach about them, and we go from there. A lot of what I do is writing reports. Is writing reports like this. So I'm sort of like, there's a few of us at O'Reilly that are sort of the think tank, and I suppose I'm part of that.
Sounds like a fun job. Fantastic. Well, not longevity with O'Reilly. I mean, gosh, I've read O'Reilly books maybe nearly that long, but that's awesome.
It has been fun, and that's a lot of why I'm still here. And also I've been working at home the entire time. So it's sort of funny when the pandemic came and people asked, "What's it like to work at home?" It's like,
Same. It's been before the pandemic, right?
If you want to go back to 1991, there is actually an article in some Connecticut business journal about this weird guy who works at home.
Yeah, bro, that a little tough back without the internet in those days. But anyway, so let's get to your report. As part of the kind of research you do about your community, learning community, you just issued, my understanding is, an annual technology trends for 2023 report, kind of looking at the 2.8 million users of the company's online learning platform. And love to hear sort of what the trends are for 2023. What's maybe what you're surprised to see, maybe what you expected to see.
Well, the big surprise is something that didn't really even make it into the report. I'm pretty sure that I added a brief mention at the end. Actually, I'm sure I added a brief mention at the end, but ChatGPT came onto the scene when we were when I was in the process of writing it. One of the things that I say in the introduction is the report is based almost entirely on the actual use of media that we have on our platform. And if there's no media, people can't view it. Mm-hmm. So ChatGPT gets like a 0 because it came up so quickly that there wasn't time to develop any content for people to see. But obviously that's been a huge change. That's a problem on the platform that we're trying, we're working very hard at fixing the content gap there, obviously, as is everyone else. And we're really interested in seeing where that goes. I mean, one obvious big change is that if you remember back to the beginning of last year, people were actually talking about, is there going to be another AI winter? AI seems sort of stale. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm reading, every day about new startups that are doing work on large language models, new startups that are working on top of ChatGPT, and OpenAI just announced their public APIs within the last couple of days. Microsoft and Meta have both announced really interesting looking new large language models. So all of a sudden, this field that was saying, "Oh, I don't know, maybe we're going to run out of money and there's going to be another winter," is like, the only show in town.
It's kind of like and I've been working on AI since the 80s, actually, Lisp and Prolog and those good things. But it seemed like machine learning really kind of brought it up to the bubble, and that resurgence of interest in AI. But like you said, it kind of seemed like the newness or the hotness of that topic wasn't nearly what we've been resurgence through generative AI, and now also a lot of talk about NLP and image processing and new languages, new models, et cetera, building out, enlarging the model that are driving things like generative AI. It's amazing how that, like I said, 3 months ago, we were barely talking about this, and now it's everything.
Yeah. 3 months ago, I suppose I wasn't entirely fair. The Stable Diffusion and I'm blanking on the name, but the Midjourney and the other generative art things, we're sort of priming the pump and got people thinking, yeah, there's something here that's really uncanny. Now we actually have, I think this is fascinating. For a company like ours, it's both for a company like ours, it's both an incredible opportunity and maybe an incredible threat. We have people like Matt Welch, who was one of our earliest authors. He wrote a book on Linux back in the 90s when he was a grad student. It was a startup called Fixie.ai, and he recently gave a speech for the ACM where he said computer science is over. Programming is over. Programming is a bad idea. Programming hasn't changed in meaningful ways since the 60s. And I remember actually there's a brilliant little piece by Alan Kay on Quora, which basically says the problem with programming is like this is the shoemaker's children have the worst shoes. We make great tools for everybody else, but our own tools that we use are horrible. And so Matt is saying that his startup wants to re-envision programming to where, the engineers write the specification, iron out the specification, figure out how to test it. And the code is all written by some much more advanced version of ChatGPT or Copilot or what have you.
Mm-hmm. No, I've heard similar discussions too, just building off the embedded base or existing base of open source code and other sources. I agree with you. I agree with that statement to a degree, because you jump into whatever modern language. Python is what I use a lot today, and it's still a lot of housekeeping, a lot of stuff that I'm like, geez, do we still have to do all this stuff? I thought we could make that easier. Hopefully we're going to make that easier.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of programming in Python these days too, and it's like some of it I like, some of it is a whole lot better than in college. Actually, the college I went to was rather weird. They taught everybody PL1, but I was programming in BASIC and some other, actually assembly language when I was in high school. But it's like you go to Python and you're editing an Emacs or whatever, and you're still writing virtual punch cards.
Yeah, setting up classes, setting up, connections to whatever APIs, bringing in packages, anyway, it's still a lot of the same things, just in a new form.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder, why do we keep doing that to ourselves? So I want to make sure we get to the report. What in the report was interesting to you that either, stand out as what people are interested in today beyond the generative AI, and maybe any other surprises in the report?
Well, one surprise was that the use of content about the major cloud providers was down. And that's actually, for me, that's a real puzzle. Why is it down? People have talked about cloud repatriation, but if you look at the cloud providers, they actually make it pretty difficult to get your stuff out. So my guess is that if people are actually trying to get themselves out of, AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, they're going to be hitting the books. They're going to be coming out of our platform to say, coming to our platform to say, how do we do it? They haven't made this easy. So I don't think that's the reason. I do think that there is, despite having written reports about surveys that we did where almost everybody says that their company is using the cloud, I've always had the sneaking suspicion that we were still at the beginning of adoption. And I think we're at maybe the 20 to 25% where people are comfortable with it, and they don't say, okay, I need a course on AWS quite so much. Content about cloud architecture and more general cloud issues was starting to come to the fore. And I also think that people are realizing that there aren't any pure cloud architectures. Everything is, everything is going to be multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's unavoidable. IT can sit around and say, okay, we're totally committed to AWS. And then a year later, there's going to be a merger or an acquisition, and they're in Azure. And what are you going to do? You're going to spend a few $1 million moving all that software to AWS for no other reason than to say now it's all in one place?
Yeah, we've been through those cycles before. It usually doesn't happen unless there's really good economics for doing it. But
that's not going to happen. So that was a puzzle. One thing, two things from the tiny bars at the bottom of the charts that I thought were really interesting. We started the year with everybody getting excited about the metaverse, and that gradually died off. But there was a really big increase in the use of content about virtual and augmented reality. 85% year over year. And I've always thought, well, first, I don't think the metaverse story is over. I think it's been phrased poorly. I think the last thing that people want is what Zuckerberg and Microsoft executives have been talking about, which is better meetings. We don't want better meetings. We want fewer meetings. But we do want better tools to collaborate. And I do think that virtual reality and augmented reality may have a role to play there. I'm sort of waiting. My gut feeling is that we have to get beyond the stage where to do virtual reality you have to put on a set of goggles that make you look like a Martian.
And that's what I wonder about. Are we really going to a future where you, I, and our kids or whoever friends are sitting around all with our goggles on, not interacting with each other in the real world, but only in virtual worlds? I mean, it takes you so out of the world you're in into another place, in gaming and things like that, and do that partially. But I don't know, that seems like a pretty sterile, we're all going to go virtual and suddenly the real world doesn't matter anymore.
It does seem like a sterile world to me. And what I would watch is what are the the executives from Niantic who the Pokemon Go people have been saying that they want to build a world of VR and AR that actually gets you outside and doing stuff. And there's a few other people who are doing that I think is important.
Some great things like Adreno, and here's an AR through your phone. You can see what the electrons are doing as they're flowing through the circuit board, the breadboard you put together. That's awesome. That's a great use of an AR type experience.
Yeah. The other thing is that I think to make AR cool and approachable, well, Apple has their glasses project, which in some ways doesn't seem like it goes all that far beyond what Google did a decade ago. But at the other hand, if there's one company on Earth that has the ability to take something like that and make it a cool fashion accessory that everybody has to have, it's Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to look at broad scale adoption, that's the gating factor that I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, again, a small bar at the bottom, and in a different completely context, we saw about a 75% growth in the use of content about WebAssembly, and that is fascinating. I mean, WebAssembly is a technology that I'll lay my cards on the table. I've always been sort of a JavaScript hater, even though once I wrote an article that said, hater or not, JavaScript is going to be the one language that rules the world.
I call JavaScript the duct tape of our languages. It just is kind of the handy tool used everywhere in whatever purpose.
Yeah. But I do think WebAssembly has an interesting chance of getting beyond that. And some people have been doing some amazing things that been doing some amazing things like I was talking to some people from Berkeley about how they teach their data 100 in particular, not the famous data 8, which is the one that everybody's required to take, But I asked them, how do you keep your students from mining Bitcoin on Berkeley's computing resources? And they said that's not an issue because we use an implementation of Jupyter notebooks that is written on top of WebAssembly and that runs in the browser, so they can mine all the Bitcoin they want. All they're doing is heating up their laptop.
Mm-hmm.
It's not touching our servers at all. And it's like, that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
a perfect example. I mean, WebAssembly, at least one of the things we talk about it a lot is edge applications computing, and your notebook running WebAssembly to do Bitcoin mining. Good example of that. I mean, not that that's the only place it can be used, but it's often cited as a use case.
Yeah, and something like that gets us beyond WebAssembly is good because it'll let people use, more polite languages like Python and Rust and Go. Another thing more from the middle of the graphs is that Rust and Go are both growing fairly significantly. We probably watched that a little bit too much because maybe the programming languages aren't as important anymore, but it's Java and Java and Python are sort of the gold standard for programming languages, but Go and Rust are growing at about 20% a year, and you don't have to do that for many years before you're before you're on the top of the heap. I mean, I forget whose survey it was. Actually, I think it was Stack Overflows that said that Rust was the most loved programming language out there. And someone else said that, this is a bastardization of the quote, but basically, everybody hates the programming languages that they absolutely have to use. So
we always want something better.
But Rust and Go are coming on strong.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised to hear that. I mean, it seems like it parallels with more cloud native, cloud built applications, obviously with Go and with Google. And there are a lot of Rust fans that I run into really like that language a lot. So
there are a lot of Rust fans, and memory safety is a big deal. I mean, that's something I've been asked to write about, and I'm a little bit scared because I don't know enough about it. But it is a big deal. I mean, there was some study that's like, that's. Oh, I think the number was 85%, but people shouldn't quote me on that. But 85% of all software vulnerabilities have something to do with memory safety.
Well, certainly buffer overflows and things like that push those boundaries. We've been having memory safety issues since the mainframe days and the PDP-11s.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember the Morris worm, and that was. And that is your classic memory safety bug.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's going back ways too.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Mike. And thanks for doing the work that you do. It's both, O'Reilly's been with us in a programming community and technical community for a long time. And, it's a resource that I use heavily as well. And so I appreciate the content and also really enjoy the research that you do about what's happening with that content and where it's headed. So we'll put a link into the description so folks can go find this report and probably other resources as well. Just a parting thought. Anything you want to add to it before we wrap up?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. This has been fun. Writing the report was a lot of work, but in the end, I'm glad it made it out, and I'm glad it's being useful. And it's one of these things. It's one of those projects that's you look back on it, and in retrospect, it was a lot more fun to do than it was when you were in the middle of it.
Yes. labor of love. I think they call those things. Like, yeah, okay, it was a little tough getting through it, but man, I really like the end product. So
yeah,
that's great. We can go that way.
Yeah, I think we had a number of good stories, and that we and that we did a good job of telling them. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put the link into the description. Thank you again. Mike Ludikies, who is VP of Technology Content with O'Reilly Media. And I'd love to have you back again, Mike. We could get you on some panels and things too.
Okay.
I really enjoyed our conversation as well.
Okay, well, thanks. I enjoyed being here.
Discover the cutting-edge insights of our new show, AI Times, a series that explores the limitless potential of artificial intelligence. Sponsored by the AI Infrastructure Alliance, the AI Times is at the forefront of the AI revolution, tackling the crucial questions of how we can leverage AI for the betterment of humanity. Stay ahead of the curve as this show delves into all things surrounding AI, including trends, pressing concerns, and the positive impact AI is making around the globe. AI Times.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Asaf Yigal, who is CTO for LogZ.io, and we're talking about generative AI and how it will be applied to DevOps. Asaf, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has got to be one of the hottest topics in recent memory. So what's your thoughts here? Is there some way to kind of use this within the platforms we have and embed and extend it? And to what extent will it automate a whole bunch of things that today are essentially manual efforts that kind of drive us all crazy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So definitely there is room for it. And we've just integrated ChatGPT with Logs.io. I think the biggest challenge of DevOps is the mounting data that just keeps on growing and growing, and the ability to make sense out of it. So companies collect more and more data to help them troubleshoot, to help them understand what's going on in their environment. The more data they collect, the harder it is for them to understand what is actually going on. The way we've integrated ChatGPT, this is the first time, and we're going to continue to evolve more capabilities of ChatGPT into the DevOps. But the way we did it is we integrated with our cognitive insights. So our cognitive insight is a patented technology that scans the internet for known issues in IT and in DevOps. So we collect links and signature, and if we find it in your logs, then we highlight it. What we did now is we kind of like use ChatGPT to ask, if this happens to you, what would be the most likely scenario? What would be the most likely cause of this problem? And we just pasted kind of like the resolution. And we were surprised at the level of intelligence and the level of insight it can bring, and how much more information it can assist with DevOps and with operators who are trying to address known issues and unknown issues. So we do see it as a way to enrich the data with insights from the wider community and to significantly reduce the time it takes to troubleshoot today.
We've also seen these platforms write some code. The quality of that code can be questionable, but what's your sense of how integrated will all these platforms get within our DevOps workflows? I mean, are we going to use them to write scripts, and are we going to use them to automate additional processes, or how far will it go?
I think yes, definitely in the DevOps space and in the development space, there's going to be some integration of ChatGPT on writing code and writing scripts and connecting between systems. I can tell you that, for example, we have an integrations team. So when we don't know how to do it, when we don't know how the integration works, if this is an obscure device that we don't know, today, the go-to action for them is to ask ChatGPT how to integrate these two systems together, and it gives them a solution that they haven't thought of before. It's not writing the code, it's not implementing the connectivity, but it just gives them the concept and the idea, which is taken from the community. So definitely that. I think there's still kind of like a compliance and a legal question whether you can actually write code with it and integrate it with your production with when it comes to specific intellectual property, because it's really unclear who actually wrote the code. It's not like the ChatGPT is writing the code; it's just taking it from somewhere else. So that's going to be, once that issue is going to be addressed, then definitely it's going to be used wider for writing codes and writing tests and doing stuff like that.
One of the issues that everybody in DevOps deals with is burnout. There's just a lot of manual effort and a lot of stress and strain on the systems these days. Do you think that that's going to be reduced as we rely more on these types of platforms to automate some of these tasks?
I think so, yes. I think some of it is a lot of the stress out and the burnout that happens today is because the level of stress these guys are under, and because the different dimensions of different systems that they have to know how to maintain and how to operate, and the ability to acquire that knowledge in real time when there is an issue in the system, when people cannot log in, where people cannot buy in your e-commerce. There's a lot of pressure coming out on these people, and they definitely spend days and nights being awake troubleshooting stuff. I think the ability to help them troubleshoot it has the potential of alleviating some of that pressure, and especially for junior people until they become more expert, it's definitely going to help with alleviating some of the pressure from them.
How smart will all this get? Because one of the challenges is training the language models to stay current, and the IT environments are changing almost, a couple of times a day now. People are dropping new code into systems. So can these things keep up with that rate of change?
I think so. I think that a lot of companies today, they utilize a lot of code that wasn't written yesterday. A lot of the code that they use is, even if they upgrade a version every hour, every 2 hours, they integrate open source that may have been written a month ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And this information is included today. Development is, and for a lot of companies, a lot of e-commerce and gaming companies and the like, is leveraging existing engine, leveraging existing open source, and connecting them in the most efficient way and the most unique way. And it's not about generating new code that is solving a problem. If this is usually the core IP of every company is usually a relatively small in kind of like what they do, and a lot of the code that actually breaks is stuff that they didn't write. Because if they wrote it, then it's easier for them to troubleshoot it, easier for them to make sense out of it. And if they didn't write it, if someone else wrote it as an open source, this is where it gets complicated, because they don't know how it runs, and when it breaks, it's hard to troubleshoot what's going on.
What will the ultimate impact of all this be on DevOps careers? Because it seems like a lot of the entry-level tasks may be automated. So are we just going to have people working at higher levels of abstraction, maybe a fewer of them, or, for that matter, are people going to be eliminated altogether?
I think we see it with every new technology that's being included, that the job gets easier, but it creates more opportunities at the end of the day. So if you see, for example, cloud adoption and Docker and Kubernetes adoption, you would think that their life would be easier because now there is an abstraction layer that can do it. But in reality, you can do more, and you can do more than people actually do more. And there is more demand for people and more demand for companies. If it's going to be easier for a company to get off the ground running with an existing product, they didn't have to wait 1 to 3 months like they do today. They can do it in 1 to 3 days. You would see more companies, you would see more technology, you would see more people being demanded for it. So I don't think that this and the mundane tasks of figuring out how an open source operates and what happens when it breaks, which today the information exists, and DevOps people today, when something breaks and something that they don't know, what they do is they Google it up and they search the internet and they read 10 different posts that tell them what the problem is. They choose one that seems like it's a likely solution and try to implement it. This is how they do their investigation. No one's going in and reading the actual code. So all it's going to do is reduce the time to resolution, which is great. Allow these people a better life balance and faster troubleshooting for issues that today they don't know how to solve. I don't think that this is going to impact the kind of employment in this.
So fewer people will be able to manage higher levels of IT at scale. I guess the other second question is that will more people adopt DevOps best practices because the barrier for acquiring those skills is going to be a lot lower.
Possibly, it is possible that the level is going to become lower. It is possible, and you would see kind of like if people try to do more with less, which I think is the kind of like the era that we live in. But they still want to do more. We're still in deficit when it comes to the amount of work needed to be done in the technology space with companies. Every company that we talk to, including ourselves as well, we wish we had more people to do the work. We wish we could generate more work from the existing people that we have. And if that's going to help, that technology is going to help us generate more with the same amount of people that we have, then this is going to be a trend in the industry itself.
Do you think there will be one or two of these types of platforms out there, or ultimately will there be, I don't know, hundreds of them all tuned for specific use cases that are better than each other, but they're all generative AI platforms to one degree or another?
It's a good question. I have no idea. I think there is definitely potential for specialization there. So if there's going to be one that is like a medical oriented, and one that's going to be DevOps and IT oriented, and one that's like travel oriented, if I want to book a flight, search for the simple one instead of me going through a bunch of sites. I don't know, kind of, I don't have any prediction on this as well. I think that if something is definitely providing a solution that it's going to attract people, and you see it with the ChatGPT, that they really came out of the blue, and they just had a great product, and this is how it's creating the trend, and now everybody's riding the trend, and Google and Microsoft and everybody is behind this generative AI.
So what's your best advice to folks? Because a lot of people tend to get nervous when we start inventing technologies that might move their proverbial cheese. How do we kind of think about this today, and what should people be doing?
So first of all, we cannot stop change. We know it from the whole history of hundreds of years that when things change, you have to adapt it and you have to make the best out of it. I think we need to kind of like join it, figure out what's the best way to leverage the technology. If it has any negative impacts on things, and continue to adopt it.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Yeah. Change is coming, whether you like it or not. So you might as well get in front of it, because otherwise it's just going to run you over. So there you have it. Asaf, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, back to you guys.
Thanks.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Faisal Bhutto, who's Vice President of Cloud and Cybersecurity for Calian IT and Cybersecurity Solutions. Yes, that was a mouthful, but I think I got it. We're talking about ChatGPT and cybersecurity and what is actually happening out there versus what maybe we're all reading about. So we'll see how it goes. Faisal, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
Everywhere you turn around these days, we're expecting Armageddon in the cybersecurity space, because machines are going to start launching massive numbers of phishing attacks using these ChatGPT type of generative AI platforms. A, do you think that that's going to happen? And B, have you seen any signs of it happening?
Yeah, so I think any good CISO or security professional should always assume there's Armageddon when it comes to the world of cyber, AI or not. But this definitely adds a new dynamic to the already tough job that my fellow colleagues have in the industry. It's funny, when ChatGPT came out, everybody was excited about all the amazing things it does and how it'll make us more efficient. But there is a report that came out where Checkpoint published a report on January 6th, if I'm not mistaken. And it was an interesting report where they actually monitored the chatter in the dark web to see how the bad guys are already looking to make their lives easier with ChatGPT. So it's that blade that cuts both ways, right? And yeah, there is chatter. I mean, there's people that, if you think about it, right, there's been a market to create new malware, ransomware kits, and what have you. And it's a service that you can buy in the dark web to detonate and infect a customer, attack a customer. Well, think about how that industry is going to change for them as well. And there has already been examples where you can see people who don't know how to write good code are using ChatGPT to write code to encrypt files for ransomware. You can see examples where these groups are looking to have ChatGPT create the most amazing impersonation emails or phishing emails that that you've ever written. Because think about it, if English is not their first language and they're trying to convince HR department to change payroll data for an employee, ChatGPT is a pretty handy tool in doing it. So it is happening out there. I do believe it's going to have an impact as it becomes more commercialized and readily available, where just like the good guys, bad guys are going to use it.
Do you have any thoughts of how we might detect this? Because historically, once I got that email, from that Nigerian prince, I could pretty much figure out the misspellings. But, now, how am I supposed to figure out that these messages are perhaps not what they pretend to be?
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, no, you won't get an email from your cousin anymore from Nigeria. It will be someone, it will be you pretending to be, who's not you, emailing your HR with the most amazingly well-written email that you'll ever see. Look, AI-driven problems have to be solved with AI-driven solutions. The industry has to evolve, and it is, to be able to incorporate automation and artificial intelligence in detection, threat, and response. So, in that example of an email that comes through, it might look amazingly perfect with no spelling mistakes. The email protection platforms or threat detection platforms have to look at indicators of compromise. Where did this email originate from? What does the header say? Is it really coming from the domain, or is it kind of sort of like a domain, which looks like it, but it isn't? And traditionally we've depended on humans to identify that. That's going to have to change, where you have to rely on machines to be able to detect that and flag that, regardless of how well written the email is. And that's just one example. You're going to have to do that on other threats that are generated around ransomware and what have you. So I do believe that the way to solve it is going to be where the entire ecosystem and the industry comes together and incorporates AI for detection, threat, and response, whether it's in SIM, EDR, XDR, email protection, and you name it. It just it won't just be human dependent. We will fail for sure to try to protect ourselves.
And this goes beyond phishing attacks. In theory, you should be able to use these platforms to show it an example of a type of vulnerability and then show me all the instances of this type of vulnerability out there. It might be more efficient way of scanning. And then likewise, I may, as an attacker, I should think, and be able to say, show me the most effective piece of malware that does this, and I will copy that. Of course, there might be guardrails that prevent that, but there's more than one of these platforms in town, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I think one of the real examples was somebody wrote a code to survey all the AWS open, their S3 buckets to see which one is using the default password and has unencrypted data, and then look for files with these 12 extension types and download them. Excel files, doc files, or what have you. So it can be really sophisticated. It goes beyond phishing emails or impersonation emails. I mean, it's the code and the ease of, because ultimately you're trying to get to an end result, and ChatGPT or something like that is helping that bad guy get to that end result a whole lot faster with a lot less effort, right? So that's why I believe that our detection and response engines have to be also have a lot of intelligence built into them and automation, because it's going to happen at a very fast pace, and your time to respond and protect is just getting smaller and smaller. You can't just wait on it for 2 days while things happen within seconds, right? And it's very fast moving as well, right? You got like a cat and mouse game. So that's where the CISOs and the folks in charge of security have to put their heads together and look at their tool sets and processes and say, how human dependent are we? How much automation can be built in terms of response and recovery, of course, detection as well?
Or are we therefore now involved in something that feels like an AI arms race in cybersecurity? And that's kind of where we are. And maybe we're behind the curve.
I think so. I think it will be that, because there is an AI arms race anyway, right? I mean, companies are trying to, Google and Microsoft are battling it out. But I think in the world of cyber, if you look at Palo Alto, Cisco, CrowdStrike, all these major manufacturers, they have to be able to, they need to be injecting more of AI and machine learning into their solutions, or else there is a big threat to their own reputation. Because at the end of the day, that's the top tier solutions are being used by customers, And if they can't protect them from what the bad guys are generating, it could really hurt their own market value and their market perception, right?
Do you think as we go along here that a lot of cybersecurity folks have been somewhat skeptical of AI, and maybe it's just because of the limitations of the use of the technology thus far, but do we need to overcome that skepticism? And what do you think is the current state of the art for cybersecurity and AI?
I don't think anybody should have any kind of doubts that this could change our world upside down after so much coverage and what we have seen just in the short amount of, since November until today, the adoption, the race. So I believe, I think just the adoption and the ease of what you can do with AI is pretty much at everybody's disposal. So I think those perceptions, if not already, have changed. And for those who think it's going to die and it's a fad, they may not have jobs, a few months from now, because, I frankly believe you've got to take this very seriously. And I believe, like, even for us, right, as a managed MDR provider, we're constantly looking at bringing in AI and automation in anything that we do, so we can be a whole lot more efficient, right? So I think organizations have to start thinking of it now. Look at your current tool sets, your processes, your people. Look at automation in the world of cyber. When you do those tabletop exercises, figure it out. What if you had an AI-led attack? How would you respond and recover from it using AI? Do you even have those technologies? Those are hard questions, but you need to ask yourself and then set budgets accordingly, go to the boards accordingly, because it's going to get real, in my opinion.
Do you think this will push more people towards consuming cybersecurity as a service? And I'm asking the question because if I'm on premise, am I ever going to be able to collect enough data to train an AI model by myself, or am I just going to have to rely on somebody who has the resources to go build that and then consume it more as something I might access via an API or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, the question you should ask yourself is, do you have the horsepower to run something called IBM Watson? Do you have the ability to go run a big, deep machine learning engine to be able to come up with certain AI algorithms? The answer is going to be, if you're not in this industry and a manufacturer working for such individuals, the answer is no. So absolutely, you have to go rely on, if you're a CISO of a hospital or a school district or an oil and gas or energy company. The reality is, cybersecurity is not the bread and butter for those companies. So you've got to be able to go rely on partners like us, as well as manufacturers out there, to be able to bring you those solutions quickly that can be effective. And that's the only answer, because you see, even as solution providers, we've got a lot of automation and AI in our security operations centers that we can respond to threats and detect and remediate from them faster. We ourselves, as the experts, also rely on our ecosystem partners like Palo Alto, Cisco, and CrowdStrike, for example, Microsoft, to help us become more efficient, because they've got the budgets, they have the quote unquote horsepower to be able to go do it a whole lot better than guys like us can even do, right? So we lean on it, we put it all together, we make sure that the right solution fits the right problem, so we can then take that as a package to the end customer. That's where integrators like us come in. So yeah, the end customers, absolutely. Their dependence, reliance, trust on manufacturers as well as partners like us, it has to be there. Trying to do it in-house, if this is not your if your P&L is not dependent on this, in the world of cyber, is a bad idea. It just doesn't work.
Will the definition of what we consider an entry-level position in cybersecurity change? Over time, we've already seen people are using generative AI platforms to write security controls and automate that process. We've also seen people talking about how a lot of those entry-level tasks are just going to be automated using SOAR platforms or whatever it is. So is the point of entry into this field rising as we're kind of sitting here, and do people need to think that through? Because suddenly I'm not going to be looking for somebody out of college with 6 months worth of experience. I'm going to be looking for people that have much higher levels of knowledge and experience when they come out of college.
Yeah, I think my opinion there is, I think it will happen over time. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, because the cyber talent shortage is so massive right now, where you want people that can understand the cyber principles, have some of the certifications, so you can get them on the path of running the systems. Because the ultimate goal is that people run the systems and systems do the job. in a most efficient organization. So I think the hiring profile, for example, for people like us would change, where we would want the people to still come in. They may not know much about AI or those tools, but our goal would be to get them trained up so they're not doing the fundamental, repetitive, mundane tasks that we can go achieve through an automation platform. But I do think the talent market is still very, very tight in the world of cyber, where employers are going to want to hire people and get them trained up, not necessarily be super selective that, oh, since you don't understand it, I won't hire you. I still think there is a massive need and it will continue. And then, even beyond cyber, we'll have to see how the industry changes, what happens to customer service agents on airline tickets, on, help desk. So I think it's going to be a sea change. And I think cyber is going to tag along with it. But for a potential person who's listening to this podcast who wants to get into the world of cyber, definitely make this part of your learning curriculum of how do you, don't just learn about cyber controls or governance, learn about automation, learn about SOAR. What does a SOAR platform do in a security operations center? Chances of you getting a job with big dollars is going to be much higher versus, just getting your security plus or your CISA plus.
All right, folks. Well, you heard it here. It may be automated. It may even have artificial intelligence, but that doesn't mean you don't need to know how it works, and you should proceed accordingly. Faisal, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had some amazing interviews with industry experts to give you the latest in the tech world. And alongside the airing of The Haunted Hacker and our newly revamped CISO Talk, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again on Thursday, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.